It's M, 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 H370. Until you do some research, don't talk to me. I'm going to find the truth while I sip this martini. Your opinion, it means squat to me. It's M, 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 H370. Not all heroes wear capes, I wear glasses to see. I'm going to find the truth while I sip this martini. The trolls hate seeing me succeed, but guess what? MM, MM, H370. Guess what? MM, MH370. Not all heroes wear capes, I wear glasses to see. I'm going to find the truth while I sip this martini. Your opinion, it means squat to me. Your opinion. MM, H370. Not all heroes wear capes, I wear glasses to see. I'm going to find the truth while I sip this martini. The trolls hate seeing me succeed, but guess what?
What's up, everybody? Good to see you guys. I have to mute this. Hold on. Good to see you guys here tonight. It's tough. I've got the audio playing in the background here. Welcome everybody to the stream tonight. Appreciate you guys. William, nice to see you. S23, JML, Truth Speaker, Cat Can, Z Jalapeno, Kimberly, good to see you. Hi, Forbies, good to see you guys. Hubba, what are you saying, Steve? Buster the Two, my channel. How's it going? Did I send up entropy donations? No, I have no idea what that means. But soon, I think you're gonna be able to donate on Twitter, so maybe that'll make you feel better. SR1977, appreciate you. Gonna request to speak on there. Casey, Haystack Sniper, nice to see you. Christopher Zen, hit the like. Appreciate you very much, man. Michael, cheers. Cheers. Yeah, no martini tonight. Michael Sham6, good to see you. The last Hard Truths was pretty good. I agree. Crispy, nice to see you. Joe Moss, Alex, Michael Jackson, good to see you. Yeah, that was an AI song. It's pretty funny. I like it. ANO, nice to see you. MN, nice to see you as well. Bad Sama, good to see you. Let's see if I missed anybody else. Thanks for being here early, guys. Devin, I see you up here as well. Wow, there's a lot of people guys who are here early. PJ Mike, I see you. UFO Nut, what's up? How's it going? Manga Collector, good to see you. S23, good to see you as well. Wow, lots of people here. Appreciate you guys. Okay, so what are we gonna be doing tonight? First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna jump onto this space with Chad and Sherry from Investigate Earth. I'm trying this out with the new streaming content, so let's see how this works with this space right now. And hey, Meme Weaver, hey, my channel, good to see you guys as well. Let's see if this works. Yeah, so first thing we're gonna jump into this stream here. So give me okay, let me see if I can get this to work. I'm gonna try to do this with the audio. Guys, let me know if this audio works, please.
Flags that were placed in the snow there.
So that's interesting. So if you think about that, though, if there are multiple flags, multiple
Can you guys hear
governments
this?
and nations over Antarctica, then how does that play
I've
into
never tried to
the
do it like this.
UFO or even
Please let me know if you can
reverse
hear this or
engineered
not.
or even direct energy weapons? Like, how does that
Yeah,
work?
okay, they can hear it.
Right? I mean,
We
that's,
figured it
I
out,
think,
chat.
possibly the biggest question.
We figured it out.
Because if that is the case, and say if you believe Hecker, which
Okay,
Ashton
we're
just
in.
had on this podcast, and by the way, I do believe Hecker. I believe what he says, and he's not the only one that said that. I mean, you got to go back to Admiral Byrd, and
Can't
many
mute it,
others.
though. Oh, here we go.
I think there have been like 11 technically whistleblowers up Antarctica that have talked about what was actually going on in Antarctica, which is either a potential hollow Earth theory or direct energy weapon type system that was in place in Antarctica. But if you have multiple nations that have some type of joint resolution in Antarctica, how does that work? Like,
wait, you can do video?
Are we not seeing something in our? And I know this is supposed to be pro-Palestine. We already went over that. But how does that work if you have some system like this? Is Russia people that are they able to come into this facility? Are they able to know what's going on the same way the United States are? And is there a mass coordinated effort that we don't know about?
Twitter, you can
whoever wants to answer that or even want to touch on that, I don't know.
Yeah. So,
Chad,
go ahead.
Sorry, Ashton. Let me just jump in real quick. This is not necessarily Antarctica, but this is going to touch on. I'm not sure who was just talking about their grandfather or their father that worked there. But I actually just posted in Telegram today about the Poseidon nuclear torpedoes that apparently Russia has been working with, and was looking at an article that was back from January, and they apparently have been doing some testing. I think it was in Bikini Atoll. So, that the whole point of that would obviously be to create these huge waves, potentially tsunamis. I don't think they completely know the full effect that it could have as of now. But that kind of testing could be related to some of the anomalies that are being seen also.
That's good. I like that.
I'm pretty sure that Bikini Atoll is part of Kwajalein Atoll.
Oh, that's pretty spicy.
Yeah, I think
like this looks pretty good.
It's in the same area.
I just have to throw out there to Ashton's point when he talks about next generation technology, and we know there's bases in Antarctica no one talks about.
This looks really
with the height of the wave. If we don't have physical confirmation of like visual
feed volume,
they
is
work
low.
on buoys, I believe, that go up and down that are able to sense. Has anyone thought of like a gravitational anomaly that's moving overhead? Just a thought.
Yeah, and Antarctica. So sorry for guys, I was just getting my stream online, but I'm testing this out. I think this works right now, which is pretty sweet. I've never had this desktop Twitter thing working correctly, but I think I've got you guys in the space audio showing up correctly. Talk to Eric Hecker about it. One of the big questions is what's the significance of the location of Antarctica? And I would argue there's a couple significant points. One for sure is that it's really cold. And if you look at superconductivity, which I think is one of the essential prerequisites for a lot of this magic type technology to function, a lot of it needs to be very cold. The other aspect is the specific location. Now, there is a magnetic anomaly that's actually in the Indian Ocean. But for Antarctica, if you look at the Earth like a giant magnet, and you've got the magnetic lines going from the North Pole to the South Pole, you can imagine that the South Pole is a pretty unique location. That's where all the magnetic fields are kind of connecting down there on the south side of your magnet there. And if you are trying to shoot a beam somewhere else, which Eric Hecker says that the ice cube neutrino detector, if you look at it, it's like buried into the earth. It's actually like a 3-dimensional antenna, if you want to think of it like that. And this can allow for directional manipulation to direct it to a specific location that you want to send it. And Thomas Bearden would argue that with scalar physics, you're sending an electromagnetic beam, transmitting it. And if you were to try to measure the electromagnetic spectrum, like the ELF, what are those called? Those ghost hunter things that they've got, you wouldn't detect anything, but you can rebuild the energy at a distance through interferometry, crossing the streams. Antarctica is a great spot for that. You can shoot it wherever you want out there. So I don't think it's any coincidence that we've got this set up in Antarctica. Now, for Chad and Sherry, if we get Eric on your show, I missed a question that I want you to ask him, which is, if those pyramids and all that other stuff, if he thinks there's wasn't a civilization out there or whatever, I'm curious as to what his thoughts are on that, because we mostly talked about the technology and the hardware that's out there and what it can do. Last thing I'll say is, so, you have this idea that you can use these devices as a transmitter. There's what are the things called? One of them is called the ARO, which is like, I forgot what it stands for, but one of these things shoots a green beam into the sky as well. I think that you could argue that some of these are, being used for communications, I think is what he said. So that this could be some kind of fashion-like communication device that's out there. A lot of really crazy advanced technology that might be happening.
Yeah, and Ashton, by the way, I think that your episode with Hecker was amazing. I think it was really good. I would love to kind of dive deeper into the civilization side of Antarctica. I don't know what he knows about that, but did you feel like Hecker was maybe a little not off-putting? I don't want to say that, but did you feel like he was more fearful of what, like maybe he kind of stepped back a step based on what was the podcast? Sean Ryan. Do you feel like he stepped back a step on your episode, or no? How do you feel about that?
Not really. I had a pre-call with him. Our pre-call went like an hour and a half as well. I felt like we could talk for hours. I mean, I got the impression from him that he's just a normal guy, and that he also, discovered that there is technology out there based on Tesla that's well beyond our understanding. And people want to dismiss him because he's technically in utilities, as a plumber, but these are the people that make everything run. These are the people that see the inside of how everything works and have to maintain it and fix it. And so he went out there and he had this experience where he realized there's more going on here than what is the official public facing explanation for what's occurring. Now, to answer your question, when he talked to AARO, they did not make him sign any NDAs. Or actually, that's not true. They did make him sign an NDA, but the NDA was only for not disclosing who he was talking to when he went and did his skiff with the AARO, and not to disclose the specific location to where he went. But everything else, he pretty much freely talked about. And in fact, on the podcast, he even mentioned Toby. I'm going to butcher his last name, but if you look into this guy, he's the son of one of the major CIA guys that was out there. And he goes to this guy's basement, and he gets invited out there to this guy's basement. He goes in his basement. He's got Tesla coils set up in his basement, and he's got a weird projector and this is early 2000s. He's got this weird projector that's projecting in hologram 3D. And he's showing him videos on the internet of Thomas Bearden. And this is, pretty early internet, still, not advent, but pretty early on. Showed him videos of Thomas Bearden talking about all this stuff too, So he and I had a very similar experience, I think, and one last thing I'll say is that he was, I think he was in the military and submarines. He was on submarines doing maintenance on them. And this is where he learned about magnetohydrodynamics, which is the idea of using electricity to produce thrust and propulsion, which the big benefit of this you can imagine for a submarine is, A, you don't need to have a huge fuel source, but also it's very quiet. And if you're in a submarine, you want to be as stealthy as possible in your submarine. And it wouldn't surprise me at all that we have advanced technology being used in submarines decades before what people think is possible out there. So I don't think he was being quiet at all about his stuff. I think he's the kind of guy that is trying to speak as freely as he can about it. He had his own personal experiences related to his time out there, and he was just telling people about that. He reiterated what he said on Sean Ryan, which is he wants people to understand that there is technological capability out there, like directed energy weapons, that people have no idea is possible. And I totally agree with him.
What do you think the purpose of the Hadron Collider? What's that all about? What are they actually doing there?
Yeah, so and what I've been told, and take this with a grain of salt. Whenever I say if there's something I've been told, you should take it with a grain of salt because it's just a story and stuff that people have told me. But is that CERN with the Large Hadron Collider, that they could be coming out with way more findings and discoveries than what they're claiming. This thing's been ongoing for what, 15 years, longer maybe. I don't remember when it first went online, maybe 2010. And if there really is an ether, another dimension to our universe, as I personally think that there is, and that Tesla talked about, they should have been able to find that thing right away. And I have a feeling that a lot of the information is being suppressed, or you could think intentionally sabotaged so they don't discover some of these findings. Because the big thing about all this is it's kind of like a cascading effect. Like the moment people start to realize this is possible, it all becomes super self-apparent. You're like, oh, of course there is. That's why we can do all this. And oh, that means that we can make direct energy weapons. And then you start to think of those implications. And eventually you get to the part where you're in Star Trek and you're warping space-time. And so that's why I think they have to keep even basic things suppressed, even basic findings. So they found out about the Higgs field. And you look at the Higgs field and you go, you can almost argue the Higgs field is describing the ether. And now in science, they'll talk about stuff like, oh, virtual particles popping in and out of existence and space isn't empty. Well, yeah, they're talking about the ether. They're talking about there being an underlying dimension to our reality. It's the exact same stuff that Tesla was talking about. They're just using different terminology for it.
Yeah, and by the way, I believe, Ashton, to what you're saying is, I think you can go a lot of different directions with CERN. I mean, with Higgs boson particle, which, by the way, isn't it very interesting that he died on the same day that, the solar eclipse, and when they started that back up, that was extremely interesting. But nonetheless, I think to your point, yes, absolutely. There's a lot of things that they don't want you to know, but also go back to there's a lot of things they're starting to find out about things they always try to disprove. And you can say that spiritually, you can say that biblically, you can say that in a lot of various ways. And you could also say that in argument to technology that we have or have been able to manipulate to our advantage of what they are finding. But I just feel like, without getting biblical or any of that stuff, it just seems like science is always trying to disprove things that have been known forever. And it seems like they just keep getting back to the same point. And it's like, if you look at reality today, everything is trying to be disproved. Everything is trying to be completely taken down and destructed. America is being destructed from within. They want you to forget your past. They want you to forget all of this stuff. There's obviously a very big initiative to that. And to your point, I think CERN is something that is extremely concerning. See what I did there? And also they want to build a much larger collider, which they have just, I believe, got a grant for. Which is going to be way hugely bigger than what's going on now. Does anyone have any thoughts?
Real quick, I want to mention that the thing about I think that's the biggest distraction, that they just got to make it bigger. Keep making our collider bigger. This is one of the posts that I got community note on. I've been getting attacked by community notes. And one of them, I posted this device. It's basically just using magnets and either DC or alternating current. And when you put this plasma or this electric charge between the alternating current, you can actually see the interference zone where you can actually see argon particles colliding with one another. And I think that you don't need to make a bigger and bigger collider. I don't think that that's necessary. I think that's the the distraction, is that I think that we can produce cold fusion, which is, you know, the interaction of these atoms at lower temperatures than the sun in confined spaces using superconducting magnets. And actually, the Large Hadron Collider uses superconducting magnets. And maybe there's some extra benefit to having it travel further, but to me, it's more of a situation of I just want as many of those particles colliding at once, and I want to see what happens. They're not necessarily shooting one particular particle and having them hit directly on some huge distance that they travel. So I think that's something where, like, generally normally people are just going, well, bigger is better, keep making it bigger, and that'll do something. When in reality, it's more of like, no, we want to miniaturize it. We want to get it to the point where I can have the sun in the palm of my hand. And when you guys look at superconductivity, especially some of these metamaterials that are coming out, you know, you can imagine just looking at these floating rocks, how you could confine atoms to the point of compress them to the point where you can get this exact type of effects. Cold fusion, in my opinion, is really just smashing the atoms together and with pressure and that type of stuff, which Salvatore Pais has a patent for that as well.
Hey, Ashton, let me ask you this question real quick, because there's people probably out there wondering what you're going to answer this. As much you had Dr. Stephen Greer in your space before, right? Or a space?
I was in a space, and I was on the panel with him. I only asked him one question, but he actually answered most of my other questions. For me, it's like, you know, I'm planning on doing a collaboration with some other big people that I think a lot of people know out there, but I want like fresh blood, because I've been looking at a lot of the people in the UFO community, and I've been trying to get a beat on them in terms of what their views are, what their opinions, what I should think about, you know, what they're saying is true or not. And I gleaned a lot from Stephen Greer in the December 15th or December 16th space that we had with him. The only question I wanted to know after I listened to him speak was, does he think that the quote unquote alien technology could be used as a doomsday weapon? And his answer was yes, absolutely. And then the only thing I would even criticize him on, I said, well, how do we protect that? And this is where everybody glosses over it.
Well, actually, listen, if I wanted to clip something right now, let me ask you this question. Do you believe that Dr. Stephen Greer in CE5 events where they summons UFOs or aliens or beings, do you think that's real?
I'm pretty skeptical, let's say, of those claims. That's the part where I don't see eye to eye on Dr. Stephen Greer. I highly respect him because he was an emergency physician, so that's why I call him doctor. He literally was a doctor. And maybe he's seen the information, you know, along with the technology. I think he's dead on with the technology, dead correct, you know, in terms of he's talked about over unity. He's literally mentioned teleportation on Sean Ryan. I'm not calling it teleportation anymore. I'm calling it warping, because that's what it is. You're warping space-time. You're not dematerializing and rematerializing an object. You're just warping space-time. So technologically wise, I think he's on point. But when it comes to the CE5 stuff, I'm skeptical. I'm open-minded to it. I'm just skeptical to it. And then, like I said before, is that, and even I think Eric Weinstein mentioned this, is this technology, the problem with it is it's a Pandora's box. This explains the suppression as well. Is the moment you start to understand the technology, you get everything. You start to understand that we can warp an object, we can create a doomsday weapon, we can get medical healing. And this is why I thought it was so absurd when Kim.com was pushing back on Stephen Greer, but they had like a little back and forth tiff during that. And Kim's just going, well, why can't the aliens just give us the cure for cancer technology and put it on the blockchain? You know, and I think he's not even thinking about the problem correctly, because the problem is that once any of the technology leaks out, it all leaks out. And this is my criticism of Stephen Greer as well, is that he says, well, we'll just keep the doomsday technology behind the veil. That's not how it works. The moment you tell somebody how free energy works and over unity, now everybody can make a doomsday weapon. So that's, to me, the reason why the government hides it.
By the way, I think that we should do, you know, Ash and I have talked about with our podcast, which this was a very impromptu space, but we've talked about on our podcast in private. We should get Stephen Greer to do a CE5 event to where we can record in all angles to prove or disprove what he says about CE5. What do you think about that?
So here's the problem with that is that from what I've heard, I shouldn't take it. That's not firsthand information, but I think that a lot of you have to like pay him to show up and do your stuff. I think everybody's got to eat. But the big criticism, the way he opens himself up to criticism is because he charges, thousands of dollars for people to go out into Joshua Tree, the desert, and do the CE5 stuff. And if you want them to show up on your stream or space, it wouldn't surprise me if even that space that he showed up to that I was on, it was like kind of weirdly sponsored by this Bartcoin, like, meme coin. Wouldn't surprise me if they paid him to show up on that. I don't know that for a fact. Just wouldn't surprise me. But that's where a lot of these UFO people, where this becomes their job. And the moment you do that, you're trying to make money off of it. And now you open yourself up to criticism where everybody says, well, you're just doing this for the money or what have you. And I'm skeptical of that too. Like what I'll tell you guys is that I was invited to go to an event. I won't say exactly when, but an event where Lou Elizondo and Danny Sheehan was going to be there, and coming up pretty soon. And I declined it because it felt like it was going to be like a kind of fundraising event, and it was going to be really awkward. And I'm skeptical of a lot of these guys too, because I don't think they see the real implications. I think for the people out there that are younger, and I'm over 40, but the people that are younger, I think that they look at the problem with a new set of eyes, and they look at it like, I want to live in a world where we have magical technology. And then I think there's a lot of people that are experiencers and older people out there that for them, disclosure has always meant, tell me about the ET, the extraterrestrial. And I don't really want to spend too much time with the disclosure people that are just trying to figure out the ET situation. For me, I want to spend time with the people that are trying to figure out, disclose the technology. How do we use that technology to improve the world? The 670,000 homeless people we have on this on just the United States, and the people that are struggling day to day just to pay rent and get by.
I agree with that, Ashton. And also, I do think though that there are people just as passionate figuring out the ET side of things because of spiritual and religious implications. And so to your point, absolutely, 100%. That is a very worldly, like, what technology do we have? What are we hiding from the public? But I do believe that there are a lot of people that I think that the more I look into the UFO community, the more we've done this for 7 years, the more people are just freaking trying to find answers. And they're trying to find answers, especially in spirituality. And I could be wrong. A lot of people could be wrong. If we're starting to maybe figure out that some of this stuff comes back to spirituality, who knows? It could be some psyop. We don't know. But at the very least, there are people that are just as dedicated. And you know this, Ashton. I mean, there are people just as dedicated as you on the ET side, ET/spiritual side of what these things could be. As you are with the physical / technology, advanced weaponry side, right? And so it's interesting. I mean, and I know that your goal was like, hey, how do I get from point A to point B to point C to point D with this, and try to prove this to be true? Because by the way, I believe that what you're saying and the technology and everything you're talking about is true. But I also believe the ET/spiritual side of things that are happening also could be true. You know what I'm saying? And I think, yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I absolutely think that there can be, aliens. And honestly, I think it's a prerequisite. If you think that aliens are visiting us from another star system or galaxy, that we have to be able to travel faster than the speed of light. Otherwise it's just the distances are too far. But I keep my mind open to any of the phenomenon. Like I was just talking with Chris from Alpha Vets earlier, which shout out to him. That was a really good podcast. And we were talking about all the different possibilities of phenomenon. I think people should be listening to Tucker Carlson. When he went on Joe Rogan, he spoke about this idea that it could be spiritual. I think that he's kind of broaching this idea of extra dimensional, this idea of angels and demons, certainly within the realm of possibility. Also the idea of the ultra terrestrial hypothesis. So AARO came out and said there's no evidence of extraterrestrials, But if you go look at the big graph of spectrum of what the alien phenomenon can be, that's only like one column. Like there's a lot of other stuff that it can be. It can still be, spiritual in that respect. It could be from our oceans. It could be underground.
Ashton,
Yeah.
I had to interrupt you for a second because
Go ahead.
I know if I don't, I'm going to forget this point. You're talking about Arrow comes out and says there's no evidence of ETs, of aliens. Does that help your case with MH370 advanced technology the U.S. government has, or does it hurt your case?
I'm glad you asked that, because that's, the funny part is that Arrow report came out and the UFO community was losing their minds. And just for everybody out there who's not familiar, I have no extra love for the UFO community. I'd say we have a contentious relationship, probably in general. But they were super upset. Everyone's angry. The Arrow's lying. I'm just sitting here going, that doesn't hurt me at all. Like, I'm just going, all I care about is technology. I don't care where that technology came from. If that came from aliens, that came from interdimensional beings, future humans, whatever it might be, it doesn't change anything about the laws of our universe and whether or not we can have anti-gravitational technology or what it might be. So no, I don't think it hurt at all. And I think that Arrow is actually now ghosting me because they're afraid I've got so much evidence that there's no way to gaslight. Like they could have to just straight up lie, and whoever lies is going to put themselves in legal liability, because the amount of evidence that those MH370 videos are real is overwhelming. And it means that we've got gravity manipulation and space-time manipulation. The difference being that one of them is just counteracting the force of gravity. I think that the EM drive, as they call it, which uses like microwaves bouncing out through like a cone, that produces what we would consider Star Trek impulse drive. And that can be a form of anti-gravity. I think that's real. But I think just straight up bending space-time with gravity manipulation is also real, which is warp drive. And then I also think this leads to cold fusion, which is producing excess energy like the sun, and also just straight up free energy, which is creating like a perpetual motion machine using magnets or other properties that are, not moving. So for me, none of that impacts me at all. And I think that that's what they're afraid of. They're not afraid of, like, if you think about it, you go, well, aliens might be real. Or is the government going to hide that? Maybe, but who cares? We've got weird octopuses and squids that you might as well just call aliens. The bigger thing the government's afraid of is losing control over the people. And the way they lose control over the people is decentralization of power, which is what free energy pretty much tells you is possible.
Yeah, but do you
Thank you,
believe the
Steve.
PSYOP is more, and I want to get back to this point for a second. Do you believe the PSYOP is more when Arrow and the government comes out and says there's no possibility of aliens? Does that make it more like, if you wanted to hide technology, right, would you not come out and try to blame aliens versus not? Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. And so there's people out there, I got a lot of people, my followers especially, that are like, aliens are not real and they're going to blue beam us with an alien invasion. I swear, guys, you got me on the record right now. If they come out and try to claim some alien invasion bullshit, I'm going to be the first person calling them out on that. I absolutely don't think we're going to have some weird alien invasion crap happen. That's definitely, I could see that PSYOP happening, where they try to claim that, yeah, we've got to band together against the aliens and you've got to fall in line with the WEF one world government or whatever bullshit that might be. Nah, man, nah. What I've discovered from digging back into the history of this technology, like it first started with the videos and, the plane, and then finding out we potentially have this technology, trying to determine whether or not it's aliens or if it's us, determining that we can have had this technology ourselves, to the point of digging back through the history of it and realizing this goes back to the 40s. Another thing that Tucker Carlson mentioned that people should be listening to is that he floated the idea that I've never heard anyone float before, that even atomic nuclear bombs could be reverse engineered technology. Now, where that reverse engineering comes from, I think that's the debate, is did we dig up some archaeological dig where we found something? Did we figure it out ourselves from the Manhattan Project? And we also figured out kind of the opposite of nuclear, which is fusion, which is, unification of the forces. Or did something crash here and we figure it out? Well, I don't really know, but I think that's a really interesting concept, because if you were to ask people in the 30s, like, hey, we can blow up a whole city, they would say that's fake. They would say that's fake the same way people are saying that warping a plane is fake right now. And that's the kind of thing that I think is an interesting thought, is that we forget that until we see it firsthand, it's really hard to believe something is possible.
I agree with that.
All right. You want to hear from someone that actually seen them firsthand 3 times and has been studying it for about 20 years?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
All right. All right. The first time I was probably about 12, 13. I'm about to be 32 now. Sorry if I sound like crap. I had a cold right now, but I was out ice skating at my grandparents' house, and like me and my cousin, he was facing the house, I was facing the Christmas tree farm. And I like looked up, and there was this giant white orb up in the sky. It's like a bluish, whitish orb. And by the time I could say, what the F is that? It like literally warped, like just out of, I can see it. It's like warped. It's just like pretty much what you see in the movies. It just warped and it was gone. And then I seen the same exact thing with him. We watched it for about a half hour. It was probably within a year or two difference, or after that. We were like looking. We lived in the country, so we were just like looking up at the stars and stuff. We seen like shooting stars, satellites, all that. And then we seen 2. They looked like stars, but they weren't stars, and they were like the same orbs I seen, but they're the size of stars up in the stars. We watched them for like a half hour. What one would do would like zigzag around the star, and the other one would follow it, do the same exact thing. Like as far as I could see, like left to right out in the country, we could see them for a half hour. So they traveled probably billions of miles in a half hour, I'd say. Then this third one, them ones, I think they're like, I don't know, some kind of light energy spirit or something like that. And the third one we seen, me and 4 people seen this one. We're driving down the highway in Michigan, and there's this giant triangle with like, I want to say 9 lights around it. And I was like, hey, when did we get this giant street light over here? And then they're like, I don't know. It's like, they're like, that don't look like a street light. It's like, dude, that's a giant UFO. This looks like something off of like Halo or something like that. And we had to turn back. We turned back around to see if we could see it. It was gone. Then we had to turn back around again because it was a highway and we were going back that way. When we went back the third time, there was a helicopter there with a spotlight on. So it was on the radar at the local airport.
Oh, I can do live captions.
No, that's crazy. I mean, there's a lot of people that have
I want to talk about
those
cloning
experiences, right? I mean, and even Ashton, to your point, I mean, to the point of kind of what we're talking about is there's a lot of people that have had those experiences, and not just those experiences. There are people that have claimed definitively that they have been abducted by beings or craft or of some sort. But then you even go back to like remote viewing and governmental programs to where they specifically talk about advanced programs to where they try to investigate anomalies or scenarios to where people have either been abducted. Think about what Tucker Carlson talked about, where there were 100 plus potential, I guess, service members that were injured or died from close interaction with these craft. Now, to that point, to Ashton's point, obviously that could absolutely be advanced technology of why they were close to craft and died or had some type of traumatic brain injury. But why would you have a governmental anything near these service members? But then also even the fighter pilots they've literally had to move entire squadrons out of certain training areas because of the amount of, I guess, activity that was in the area of UAPs or things they did not know what it was. How likely would it be that we have programs that are completely opposite of our military, that our military doesn't even know about in training scenarios, Ashley?
Yeah, and that's the part where it kind of leads into Havana Syndrome. Like, could these UFOs be having negative effects on people? I absolutely think they could. When you look at some of these electrogravitic effects, electromagnetic effects, you can easily imagine how that might mess with somebody's brain. I would not stand underneath a UFO. If I saw one floating around, I would avoid it for sure. And you know, I've been posting about, not negatively, but I've been posting about Gary Nolan, who I think is on the forefront of some of the Havana Syndrome research out there, looking at people's, you know, CT scans of people's brains that were supposedly affected. And there are people out there claiming that like it's actually physically changed the chemical makeup or the structure of people's minds, which is scary stuff. And I just want to say that I have the utmost respect for Gary Nolan. He's a Stanford PhD and professor. So I think that's something that people should definitely look into. And then the other side too of it is the nukes. You know, a lot of people ask about, you know, maybe the UFOs are some kind of connection to the nukes. I think Robert Saleh was one of the people who was a serviceman on one of the nuke sites where supposedly the UFOs were shutting down the nukes, which definitely begs the question on if there's some kind of connection between just not only UFOs and nukes, but you know, UFO or nukes give off, I think, a strong electromagnetic pulse when they go off. If I'm wrong on that, feel free to fact check me. But I think that a lot of this has to do with electromagnetic properties. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if there's a direct connection there. Oh, and one last thought before I forget. And I want to ask you guys about cloning in a minute after this as well. But people wonder how UFOs could get knocked out of the sky. At this point, I'm very confident in saying that radar can just knock UFOs out of the sky because it uses the same way they fly is essentially a form of radar phase conjugation. And if you just disrupt that, it's like taking the steering wheel and just crashing them into a tree. So even though technology can seem extremely advanced, it does not make a ship or a craft invincible. And everything has its vulnerability, just like how Superman is vulnerable to kryptonite. It's that UFOs that might fly around using electromagnetic effects become very vulnerable just to straight up radar beams. If we shoot a scalar beam at it, it might just fall out of the sky.
Yeah, and Ashton, by the way, to your point, I've been in aviation for a long time. I don't ever talk about the capacity of what I am in aviation because of our podcast and what we talked about. But regardless of the fact, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are things that can disrupt either GPS or all types of instruments and aircraft on a regular basis. And if you think about even the UFO, you know, hypothesis as far as how these things might move electromagnetically, you can just probably grasp that if you can disrupt the magnetic field or the actual frequency, if you even think of like radio frequency waves, potentially they're going through that phase. If you can disrupt that, then you could technically knock that physical manifestation, even if they are from another dimension, you can knock them out and bring them down to the ground. I know it sounds crazy, but it is all about almost like a electromagnetic / radio frequency warfare. And I think we have an ability to do that. Same way that, you know, they say these things are very interested in nuclear weapons and our nuclear facilities. Why are they interested in that? Because, you know, if you understand what, you know, nuclear does in radiation, well, you know, that disrupts a lot of electronics, and especially in EMP type weapons. How much of these nuclear facilities actually have EMP weapons intact on these nuclear weapons? A lot of these nuclear weapons in modern day actually have an EMP type weaponry on almost all nuclear weapons. I read an article the other day. Most of these things can completely disrupt electromagnetic pulses, in which if we think anything about how maybe these things operate, then you have to think exactly what you're just saying, Ashton. Magnetic frequencies, magnetic pulses, magnetic energy. That's where potentially they operate. And if you have a system to disrupt that, maybe that explains some of the disruption or crashes of these craft. Side with the conversation. You want to talk?
Real quick, one more thing, and then we can jump to some questions on there. Because Eric Hecker also, one of the things is that, you know, we might be dealing with warfare that's going on that is electromagnetic in its properties. You know, when we talk about mapping the ionosphere or mapping the magnetosphere, you could imagine that not only are we just doing that to see what's going on the Earth, but we're doing that to see what our enemies are doing to manipulate those things if we have electromagnetic weapons that we can use. And Eric Hecker mentioned that a lot of his people that he was out there in Antarctica with experienced Havana syndrome-like symptoms. And one of them even asked to be evacuated. I found the news article and I posted it in the middle of our conversation I was having with him. And like, she was named and everything out there. So you can imagine just being near those kinds of, that's kind of hardware that's doing that could have detrimental effects.
Yeah, frequencies. I mean, for people that don't know what Schumann resonance is, the Schumann resonance, which is basically the Earth's heartbeat, they call it, is a frequency. I think it's 7.83 hertz. I could be wrong about that, but that's essentially the Earth's heartbeat. That is the frequency, the radio, the RF frequency of the Earth. And if you look at the Schumann resonance, you start looking at what is the frequency that our hearts beat, our brain waves connect. It's the same frequency, which is very weird. And so if you think about people, and by the way, the QAnon shaman, what they call him, the shaman, he's very like earth grounding shamanist approaches on a lot of things. But regardless, there's a lot of people that believe if you ground yourself with the earth, you ground yourself with yourself, because you literally have that same frequency that kind of connects you to reality in a lot of ways. And frequency is everything. I really think it's everything. And I also think that just like they control social media, control mass formation psychosis, control psychology, and what you believe and what you think, and all those things, they can also control frequency. And I think that's what they're using now for weaponry. Go ahead with a side with Constitution. What's up, Nim?
That is exactly what I was going to talk about. Schumann, for the Schumann resonance. It is 7.83 exactly. It's what your heartbeat is at. It's what your mind is at. It's what the Earth is at, and they are absolutely fucking with us with that. They have the scalar waves. Yes, they can operate at different frequencies to screw up that resonance, and at a certain scalar resonance, that it can help you, but if they increase it, it can hurt you. It can hurt you badly. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we actually do live approximately 50 miles as the crow flies from Area 51. And my husband is very interested in tracking what happens, not only down at the border and where these flights go from there, but we track a lot of stuff that goes on at Area 51. We see a lot of weird stuff going on there, and it goes around at least 50 to 75 miles in a circular area around Area 51. And we know they have something that they're flying. I don't know if it's us or something else coming out of Area 51 that is not anything like we've ever seen them fly, ever. It's Dave, what would you call that thing that you were tracking the other night?
I don't know.
It was something that was anti-gravity, wasn't it?
Yeah, it seemed like
Definitely something that was anti-gravity. It was not like any kind of
vast distances in a split second.
Yeah, vast distances in a split second. I mean, it was unlike anything that we've ever tracked before coming out of that area. And it wasn't a drone. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't anything like that. It wasn't anything like they've tracked of those little, whatever they call those little tic tacs. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like anything that I've ever seen on any of the UFO videos. It wasn't anything like that. It was so fast. And it was going. If I don't even know how to explain the traverse course it took. It was like nothing we've ever seen, and it's the first time we've seen anything coming out of Area 51 that was like that. We've seen very strange stuff, but this was really odd. And the other thing that I was going to mention, I don't know if any of you were in that space where I think his first name was Christopher Mellon, the billionaire.
Oh yeah, we know he is for sure.
Okay, I'm old, I'm not a conservative. I know it sounds like I am with that side with the Constitution. I'm an old-time classic liberal. The rest of these guys that call themselves liberals, they're not. They're leftist progressive posers. They are not liberals. I'm telling you right now. They don't have no tolerance. They don't believe in free speech. They don't believe in listening to other people's opinions. What they're doing to Trump is banana republic stuff, whether you like them or not. And believe me, I'm highly suspicious of them. I got a problem with the Zionists. I know what they've done to. In
I love this lady.
1967, they went after the USS Liberty, and they killed 47 of our guys on that ship, and 100 plus were seriously injured. And I believe it was McNamara that they got a message out, but when the pilots on the planes were almost there, he called them back. Our government and the Israeli government covered that thing up. And that's not the only time this kind of stuff has happened. So believe me, I've been researching for a very, very long time. I know what's been going on in our government. And what's going on now is absolute treason. Absolute treason. So you'll have to forgive me right now, but what I see going on has really got me very upset. I'm very, very upset with what I see going on because
And side with the Constitution. Let me ask you real quick.
Yeah.
We, I think, all agree 100% with what you're saying. 100%. And we've heard so many people that were once liberals that are saying this is not liberalism, right? And but nonetheless, how did you differ from what you guys tracked out of what you're seeing based on all the videos you see? What was the difference? Like, did you see a light in the sky?
No, we were using a plane tracking software.
Okay.
And we were actually seeing the flight path from this plane tracking software. We track the flights out of Las Vegas that take the employees over to Area 51 and back. We track all this.
Yeah.
They have all kinds of weird stuff that happen, and you'll have times where something happens where it's almost like something escapes or something happens that they're not prepared for, and they go on a almost like a search mechanism where they've got drones out and they've got the Black Hawks out and they're looking. It's like they're searching for something, and it's very odd because these lights will come over the area of. I live in a place called Pahrump. I don't know if you're familiar with the old time Coast to Coast radio program. They now do it out of Burbank with what's the guy that does it out of Burbank? Who?
This lady's great.
Oh, George Norrie, but it used to be Art Bell.
Yeah, Art
was
Bell.
the Coast to Coast AM that did all the things that bump in the night at 12 midnight. I don't know if you guys remember that, and I used to listen to Bill Cooper, who didn't trust Alex Jones. And what was the Ride a Pale Horse, or I've got the book. Behold a Pale Horse. I don't know if you guys, and if you are old enough to remember any of that stuff, but I've been researching for a very, very long time. Okay, Ashton, you know what I'm talking about. Okay.
Yeah, Behold the Pale Horse. Yeah, I think that's a book that I've been recommended to read several times. But
I would read it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy on X that actually has it. His handle is, it's got to be K2, I think it is. That he's got the full Bill Cooper reading it, doing a readout of that book. But anyway, I don't know why I am, but I'm both left brain, right brain. And I was born at Fort Huachuca, Arizona, the actual fort. My dad was an intelligence instructor for the Army. And when the Navy opened it up on February 1st, 1951, my father was stationed there with the Army February 8th, 1951. And I was born there August 12th, 1952. My dad never told me what he did there. But first, I've been learning skills on how to access my subconscious. And I was able to pull out that he was an instructor there. And I don't know, but I've been able to access stuff in my subconscious about things that went on there. I know that sounds really weird, and I know what I'm going to say next is going to sound even weirder. But they're doing something to me and my husband. We're smart. We're not Mensa smart, although they've really lowered their expectations on intelligence scores. But we're pretty smart people. We used to follow Tom
Mensa chat.
Bearden. Do you know who he is? He's dead now.
Just dropped Tom Bearden, guys. Oh, yes, I know Thomas Bearden, Lieutenant Colonel.
Yes, Lieutenant Colonel in the Army. That's the guy. We used to follow his stuff all the time. Now, I understand the theory, but I can't do the math proofs that well. I'm not that strong in the math
Chat, you were right.
analysis and
You were
that
right,
stuff.
chat.
I can do the geometry and that kind of stuff, but I don't have enough of the math analysis and that. So I get the theory, and I can tell you right now that I have never agreed with this Big Bang theory. Never, ever, ever. I don't think it's right at all. I'm sorry, I don't. I think they've thrown in this string theory. I think is bullshit. They've thrown in crap to throw us off the
smart, chat.
path on our physics. Don't ask me why. I can't explain it to you mathematically, but theory-wise, it makes no sense. But I think they're doing something. They're throwing something our way at my house in particular. That sounds really conspiracy theorist, and we are conspiracy theorists. We are, but there's something going on that we're getting.
I'm following.
We're having problems with our ears. We're getting these. I know it sounds weird. I probably shouldn't even go any further, but I think they're attacking us with some kind of scalar wave or something. And I just found a report on how I know they continued on with MK Ultra, and there were some other projects that were in line with that. And I just found something on what they continued on with. And frankly, Reagan was part of this whole thing. I know the conservatives don't like to hear that, but that's a fact. I hate to tell you, but that's a fact. You don't let all these people out of insane asylums and set them back on the streets. There were a lot of people that I ran into back then that should have still been in those asylums. I'm sorry, but that's part of the problem with these homeless people out there. They should be in asylums. Okay, that's all I have to say. But I just wanted to add that to your conversation. So
no, thank you very much. People in my chat, first of all, they called you talking about scalar stuff, which was awesome. Thomas Bearden reference, awesome. People want to know if you have a blog. I think I got.
No, I don't.
Oh, that's too bad. Like 50 people in my chat said that you're based, apparently. So you got some good praise here, man.
Thank you. I'm so glad. I was afraid to talk because a lot of the conservatives, I started identifying myself as a liberal because I just got tired of stop denigrating liberals. There's a lot of them out there that you could catch if you'd stop prejudging them. I don't prejudge anybody. I joined the GOP to try to get rid of the rhinos and the neocons. I don't believe in war unless they're attacking us.
Is this lady?
Why would you? You're missing so many people that you could draw in if you'd stop using that word liberal to denigrate everybody. Don't you remember Brendan Straker?
Yes,
Scalar Granny. He was a total dyed-in-the-wool progressive. Somebody showed him what they were doing to Trump's speeches, and that's how they got him in. Now he's with the walkaway campaign. You're losing so many people by doing that. Stop doing that. It drives me nuts.
That's excellent. Oh no, you're good. That's an excellent point, and it's
there
really
you go, if you want to follow
to hear somebody who's not necessarily identifying as a conservative, but does share a lot of like-minded ideas. So thank you for that. I definitely don't think you're alone in that whatsoever, and I do think it's important that we try to reach those people also. So
absolutely, there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah, and Shane, I know you've been waiting for a little bit, so we'll get to you, and then American
Yep,
Citizen.
I'll shut
You
up.
can go ahead and go. Oh no, thank you so much for sharing. Truly, we appreciate it.
Oh, it's no worries at all. It actually, I was gonna say afterwards a
Taylor
few
Granny
things.
chat.
She, wow, that was awesome. You guys should have her on the show. But no, I was just gonna say when you were talking about the military knowing about these things. So I had my own experience back when I was about 19 years old, and I haven't really told many people about it. Everyone thinks you're nuts, but I figured I might as well say something about Chad and Sherry. You know this place very well, Hilton Head Island. I was there for a vacation. I was there for a week before this happened, so there's no military anything happening on the beach. And I'm an avid fisherman, so I'd gone out. Everyone was in the hotel, like drinking at the bar and stuff like that. And I know it's like 11 o'clock at night, and I just wanted to go see if I can catch something. So I'm out shore fishing, and then all of a sudden everything got quiet, and I'm like, why? I'm not hearing waves. I'm not hearing anything. And I look above me, and there's just this black triangle that's like probably 100 feet above my head. And like, this is not a dream. This isn't, this is like, this actually happened to me. And the crazy thing is I went inside after, because I had ran inside. I didn't say anything to anybody because I was just like in such shock. I went in and I went to the bar with my ex, but I was out there and I was fishing, and it all went silent. And I looked above me, and it was like this, it was blacker than the sky, and there was no noise whatsoever. And then lights on the side turned on. So it was a triangle. And I just dropped my pole, and I was I lost my pole. And they actually asked me, like, what happened to your pole? And I was like, oh, I don't know. It got pulled in. And I just started running. And I looked above me, and it was following me up. And then I looked above me again. As the bar was like at the back of the hotel, so it was like not a hotel, but like a whatchamacallit, like it was like a nice hotel or whatever. But it had a bar.
It was a resort, Shane, because you're in Hilton Head. We go to Hilton Head all the time. That's a resort, bro.
Yeah, a resort. Yeah, exactly. So I'm sorry. Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to think of the name for it. I'm just being stupid. And I
Can't find
I
the
look
space.
back up in the air again, and it's gone. But so it's gone, but I'm still running. I run to the back, and my ex is there, and I'm like breathing heavily, and she's like, "What's wrong?"
My name.
I'm like, nothing. Can I get a margarita? But like, still, like, that will like sit with me for the rest of my life. The next day, though, so this is the moral of the story. The next day, I'm not thinking about it anymore, really, because like, I don't know, something like that happens, and you kind of like put it out of your mind. But me and my ex are laying on the beach, and everything's normal. And we got out there about 9 o'clock in the morning. About 10 o'clock in the morning, 2 Apaches go down the beach back and forth about 10 times. There was no military whatsoever before that. And I'm like, to my ex, like, she's like, wow, those are like military. I was like, yeah, those are fucking Apaches. I was like, I've never even seen one of those fly through the sky before. But I just figured I'd add that just because that, seems pretty interesting.
I wonder if we're getting blacklisted
before
here.
we get to anyone else, I got to say we go to Hilton Head all the time, and I think you're one of our listeners. But yeah, we go to Hilton Head all the time, and yeah, I've never seen an Apache at Hilton Head ever. I got to say, you might see. By the way, you don't even see fighter jets. They do have Marine Corps Station Beaufort there, which is they do have F-18s. They do not have Apaches, so that's an Army thing, but that's interesting you saw that. And there has been some weird stuff happen at Hilton Head while we're there. Long story, whatever, but it was a very interesting story. Holy crap. And I think I want to say this before we get to someone else. I think because American is wanting to speak, American Citizen. What I will say is that I think that so many experiences or so many things that we hear or start to realize or we have an awakening. I think that's why even the people that are here right now is why you guys are here. I think that our listeners that we have all around the world, those people that listen to us is because they have these experiences. They have these awakenings to where they're like, holy shit, what is going on? Let me go try to find answers. And that's why it's always tough sometimes for us to, dude. There are times we do podcasts where we're like, holy shit, how do we get the best possible message for this topic? Because people are so desperate for answers, and we have to try to find some way to like portray what we're really wanting to say, because we know that Shane and people like Side with the Constitution and all these people are out there listening, and it's like, do you understand how big of a freaking I don't know, what is it, a duty that is to try to do that? And I know Ashton feels the same way as far as MH370 and what he's trying to portray to people. And that is so tough, but also it is so uniting because we are all here. There's very few of us here tonight, but what I'm saying is there are so many people out there that are desperately trying to find the truth, and we are on the front lines, guys. Whether you realize it or not, I mean, yeah, we're not out battling like the Civil War or 1776, but we are in a different way. We are for the information war. And I think the front lines of the war today is information. As though when I often hear people say, what can we do? How can we do this? I don't give a shit about what happens in the end result. I just care about what you know and what you understand and what you believe. And as long as you at least believe the truth, as long as you at least see past the BS, that's all we want.
Thank you, Wang Wang. Appreciate it.
And I thank you too, by the way. Like seriously, because like this podcast, like after seeing that, and then like after that, I was kind of like questioning everything, you know. And then also after COVID, especially. But like, I think I started following you in like 2019, and I became I'm a trucker. And so obviously I listen to you guys. The moment the podcast comes out, I start listening to you. But like, I mean, like to be able to listen to like, you know, you guys and like, or people that come on and stuff like that. And like, to be able to hear, you know, all that. And like, you know, to hear that, you know, I'm not, you know, I went out there and I saw that, but like, I don't tell anybody about it. I think I've told like 2 people.
Organic.
Because it's like, you know, you tell people and it's like,
there's Tupa.
What are they going to say? Like, I'd rather just keep it inside. But like, you know, here, like people understand. But like to be able to listen to your podcasts, you know, it makes a big difference. I just wanted to let you know that.
You bring people up.
Thank you. Holy crap. That means
I just wanted to echo for sure what Chad said. And like, thank you for sharing. And this is definitely like a judgment-free zone. So anybody else that has anything that they want to bring up, like this is definitely the place to talk about it. This is a place that we can all get together and like share these stories. And a lot of people, I'm sure, are on the same page. And Shane, you definitely are not the only person that's had experiences like that. But to your point, I think a lot of people just don't talk about it because
I can't bring people up.
Taboo, and in a lot of circles, you know, you get labeled a conspiracy theorist or, you know, worse. So
worse.
What up, Tuba?
Yeah. But
Tuba in the house.
Being willing to actually talk about that. And if there's anybody else that has anything that they want to discuss, definitely request to speak, and we will add you as a speaker. And then if you are ready to say something, just throw a hand up. But
by the way, Sam, before you go on, we're gonna get to probably American next or whatever. American Michael Tupacabra, I see you in here. We have you a speaker.
Oh, Tupa.
I want to ask you a specific question as far as UFO community after we get to American, because Americans have been there for a while.
How do we get Tupa?
Sounds good. Yeah.
Oh,
great to be here.
He is up somehow.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to chime in on what Ashton was saying about the Havana Syndrome. I don't remember if I heard it on your guys' podcast or a different one, because I listen to them about 12 hours a day while I'm at work. One of them I heard, though, that the Ice Cube neutrino research facility, you could find like the specs for it and stuff online, and they found it, and it actually emits and transmits frequency, and that could have something to do with the Havana Syndrome there, I was thinking. But and then just chime in on what Shane was talking about, that triangle. I'm pretty sure that's the same one I seen. It had to have been at least the size of a football stadium, I'd say. It was hard to tell because it was dark when we were driving, but that's pretty much all I had.
Thank you, Wang Wang. Yeah, real quick. So another crazy thing, and I don't think it's after you learn about scalar physics, which scalar granny in here. I hope that's not doesn't make you feel bad calling you that. That's what everybody wants to call you now. I was talking about scalar physics and Thomas Beard, and when you learn about phase conjugation, you begin to learn that radar is not simply passive receiving and listening and detection, but that it can be used to potentially transmit energy through scalar potentials out there. And they're actually planning on taking that Ice Cube neutrino detector, which has 5,160 DOMs in it that each have 2,000 volts, and they're planning to make it 10 times bigger. What the hell? You know what Eric and I were talking about? I was like, I can't wait to hear what explanation they give for the forward public facing explanation for why they need to make this thing 10 times bigger than it is now. Like, what bullshit are they going to come up with? Like, oh, we've got to detect neutrinos from the earliest form of the Big Bang or some nonsense. It's like, come on, man. There's got to be something else going on with this thing.
By the way, Ashton, to Ashton's point, Ashton,
Thank you,
by the way,
Wang.
and Tupa, you can probably agree or not agree. I don't know. But Ashton is so smart and he's researched so much shit. I just want to point out real quick. Can you guys still hear me? Hopefully, because
yeah, we can hear you. We're good.
Okay.
Yep.
So a neutrino detector. I want you guys to understand.
I don't even know what a neutrino detector is, Chad.
What even a ice cube neutrino detector is, but in particular, a neutrino detector. A neutrino detector is a physics apparatus which is designed to study neutrinos because neutrinos only weakly interact with other particles of matter. Neutrino detectors must be very large to detect significant numbers of neutrinos. And by the way, they believe that neutrinos, when you hear about ice cube neutrino detector, what are they doing in Antarctica? What does that even matter? If you think about CERN, CERN is a particle collider, but they're also trying to figure out the building blocks, or at least to be able to harness antimatter. Right? Antimatter is everything that is opposite of what we see. It's very hostile. It's very chaotic. But neutrinos, and in particular neutrino detectors, they believe neutrinos interact possibly with antimatter. And so it's almost like neutrino detectors are kind of the in-between potentially of matter and antimatter. And so when you think about an ice cube neutrino detector, what are they trying to detect? They're trying to detect the in-between of everything we see, which is matter, and everything we have no idea about, which we don't see, which we do interact with, which is antimatter, and also maybe even physically and even spiritually and emotionally affect us, right? So I know that sounds freaking nuts, right? Yeah, it does. Either way, I just want to try to explain what a neutrino detector even is and what is neutrinos. Neutrinos potentially interact with matter and antimatter, but it may be the in-between particle or semi-particle of matter and antimatter. Michael, go ahead, and then Chupacabra, we'll get to you.
Yeah, I was going to bring up a couple of things. One thing that Sherry mentioned about social media, about one side able to get the platforms, and the other side getting censored. Well, as for me, is I work as a probation parole officer for the state of Arkansas, right? So we catch so many people with weapons and drugs all over social media all the time. So I just want to say, because of that, I agree with Sherry on that. It's like that's what they're trying to promote, saying it's okay. But when someone tries to speak their mind, they get blocked from like Facebook or whatever on that. So I just want to say I agree with her on that. And that's about all I have to say on everything.
Well, Michael, by the way, we appreciate you as a listener, man. We see you all the time on our Telegram and all that. We appreciate you very much. And Shane, you too. I know we know Shane. Chupacabra, we're gonna get to you because we have to ask you.
Sure.
You being in the UFO community, what do you feel like is
another dono?
Now you are obviously showing up late to the conversation. We're talking about crazy stuff, but we were recently talking about the UFO community versus
interesting.
Let's just say UFO community versus kind of like Joe Rogan versus Tucker, to where you have Joe Rogan going against Tucker in some ways, saying that a lot of what we're probably seeing is
Yoga.
advanced tech, right? It is government technology, reverse engineered maybe at the latter part. So you have Ashton, which is saying the MS-370 was potentially kidnapped or teleported based on U.S. government technology or other technology. And then you have you, which are obviously involved in the UFO community with Skyfire News and so on. What do you feel like? Like, where is the divide? What do you believe? And is there a correlation with both?
Good question. I mean, that's a big question. I think with Ashton, the divide really comes between like almost a religiosity and more of a scientific mind. As much as people would love to exclaim that ufology is full of scientific people and we're looking for the science, if you really listen, even not even like dig deeper or lift up the rug, if you just listen, you'll find that a majority of us ufologists are very much faithless and looking to the subject for some type of bigger than the self kind of belief system, which is fine. I mean, that's people do that, right? What did Russell Brand say? We are a species who worships. You know, it's a matter of where and what you want to worship. And the truth and the science of it all is sometimes left to the wayside, you know. And with Ashton, he's gone for like the logical, provable, reliable facts that you can back up and really have a conversation about. And a lot of people took offense to that. A lot of people in the community were very threatened by that because, you know, in the same way I think a lot of atheists look back on you know, like let's say the Dark Ages, right? They think, oh, you know, religion was the devil, it was holding everything back, you know, and the idea of like, you know, getting through it, getting some new information out, it was viewed as heresy. It really was. It was heresy to ask strong questions and to bring real answers. And so, yeah, I think right now what we're seeing is a clash between an old guard who got away with dictating what the world was in terms of paranormal and fringe science, right? Advanced science. They got away with dictating that through their books and through their book sales. Now with media as immediate as it is, that's gone. And people who worked on that model or who lived off of that model, they're having a hard time, you know? And so I think one of the things they resort to is slander. And so you see a lot of the old guard, I'm not calling any names, you just see a lot of them gatekeeping, and Ashton found himself at the front of that gate.
You know what's funny, Tupa, is that there are a couple of different things you said. Number one, you can't be atheist and be a Christian, right?
True.
But you can be pro or not pro, but I guess let's just say you cannot also be saying that we have such advanced technology that some of this UFO stuff is possible. And then you could also say that UFOs are also possible. But to the contrary, you can't be atheist and a Christian or believe both could possibly exist. Does that make sense? I know it sounds crazy, but
well, yeah, I believe with that statement 100%. You can't be an atheist and a Christian. You know, I think that's absolutely correct.
But yeah, you can be Ashton and you can be Jeremy Corbell.
Well, so time. Yeah, if I can jump in on that, I mean, you know, my opinion is kind of, you know, I think Tupa hit the nail on the head. He's a very introspective guy. I appreciate Tupa a lot. This is why I've always gravitated towards him. Is that, yeah, there's a lot of people that are gatekeeping information in the UFO community, and if somebody comes in and they say, "Nah, you guys are all wrong. This is what really matters," like that threatens a lot of people's perspectives of things. And I came in and I went, you know what? Aliens could exist, but I don't really care. And that right alone just divides the community in half. And then I said, you know what I care about is the technology side of this. And, you know, if there are aliens visiting us, then you got to explain how they're visiting us. And hey, look, this is how it happens, and dug into that. So I personally feel like I've found myself a little niche here. But I don't want to like put down all these people who are these UFO celebrities and community type people, because I think from their perspective, they look at me and what I propose is so far beyond the paradigm that they wonder, am I disinformation? And I think it just becomes kind of a, that's a skeptical type of opinion that you can have. You can say, well, this guy's spreading information that's so contrary to what we've been pushing out there that he's trying to distract us. He's trying to derail us. But the thing that throws that out the window is that nothing's been going on. Nothing was going on in the time that I've been looking at this. There's been no major developments. The last thing was this UAP hearings that we had last summer. That was before I even started coming onto the scene with any of this.
Ashton,
one real quick, one last thing I want to say is, like, you see that, my opinion, like with this Jeremy or Jason Sands thing that came up, is that a lot of people are just looking for someone to validate their experiences that comes out, that they can, elevate to this higher level and go, this is my hero, this is my champion out there. And I've come on and said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to show you the evidence. I'm going to make you come to terms with it for yourself.
Ashton, how do you compare yourself to listen, next topic, Mick West.
Well, actually, let's do it. I have a better idea for a topic. You tell me if you agree or not, but I kind of want to talk a little bit about cloning. I haven't really ever talked about that very much, and I will present it like this. So, I've lived through the Bush era administration, and in the Bush administration in the early 2000s, they outlawed cloning. And I thought that was very weird, because we were entering an era in the late 1990s where it felt like anything was going to be possible. And people started cloning sheep, and you start wondering, can we clone people? And what would happen if we clone a person? Especially with respect to the idea of, like, there's a lot of these studies done about identical twins and things like that. And it does make you wonder, especially now with the age of CRISPR, where CRISPR is like, we can do genetic editing of people, and where Putin is literally talking to Tucker Carlson 2 months ago, and saying that we can create super soldiers. Do you think that we can actually clone people? And if so, when is my ScarJo clone going to come? I've been waiting for a very long time.
Ashton, abso-freaking-lutely. Listen, that's a weird thing, because it goes back to a little bit of both. Like, that exactly what you're asking goes back to, can we have advanced technology? But can you have that much advanced technology
That's for you,
without
chat.
the spiritual realm, the UFO, that whole entire scenario? I don't know. Tuba, what do you think, briefly?
Bucking buffaloes, you are.
Back to what I was saying, Mick West, and I know what you're saying, Ashton, with cloning, but we can incorporate this. Is Ashton to the UFO community Mick West in some ways, just on the other side? I mean, Mick West is everything debunking UFOs. Like, everything that he posts is balloons. It doesn't make a shit what it is. Like, if you see an actual craft and you have a high definition picture going under the ocean, he will say it's a balloon.
I think definitely apples to oranges. These are two different animals. Mick West is almost Mick West is almost pathologically skeptical, right? And I think he looks down on the UFO community and anyone who believes anything. That's not Ashton. Does not. I have not caught this from you at all, Ashton, that you look down on the community or people who believe in stuff. In fact, you catch flack for making bold claims. I think you got a lot of respect for people who make bold claims and can at least back them up, or at least go toe to toe with them. But you're not out here trying to check people and call them out on their beliefs. If anything, you check them and call them out on their behavior, as it pertains to, like, their bias and their the way that some people gloat, and people have tried to celebrate Ashton's downfall, and every time I think it really does come back to bite him in the ass, dude. It's one of the funniest things to see, is everyone celebrating, right? There's something about you, Ashton. I think people think they can take you down very quickly, and then it just doesn't happen. And then they start to, now they play victim instantly. Like, it goes from, I got this easy shit right here. Then you fight back, and then you win. They're like, oh, this guy's a fucking Russian op. And I'm like, dude, I hear the craziest cope from people who go toe to toe and just fail, because I think they realize in the process that you're not pushing
all over
something that you made up in your mind. You actually are one of the few people in the community who's like, hey, look at this, I've looked at this. And then I think that the microcosm here is the videos, right? So many times they were debunked, and every time you're like, no, No, and at first it sounds like stubbornness, right? And a lot of people think, oh, this guy's a fucking mule. He's never gonna budge on this no matter what we show him. But like, let's take the contrail, for example, right? Mick West posts a contrail video. Is like, this is the only video you need to see, and there are more videos, but this is the only one you need to see. The contrails aren't moving because of some VFX. Dude, there's no way, you know. And then sure enough, I know it got a lot of people to be like, okay,
Ian
that's
Carroll's
the nail
here.
in the coffin for me, because this guy came through
Oh
and
shit, this is about to get spicy,
and
chat.
knowledgeable and confident about his debunk. But yeah, the risky move is always believing. The risky move is always like taking the risk and sticking your neck out there. And in that sense, I think
I want to say this real quick. To your point, what you're saying is that Ashton is desperately trying to speak the truth, but they have done everything they can to destroy him. What does that mean? I mean, is it, to your point, is it that Ashton is a good speaker, or is it that they can't, you know, there was something that the Tucker Carlson, actually, no, sorry. It was Graham Hancock episode of Joe Rogan where they said that if you have to continue to debunk, that's a problem, right? I mean, if you have to continue to debunk, and Tuba, do you believe that MH370, according to Ashton, happened? Let me ask you that. And then number two, think about this. Did you see the Chinese government there? They said there were 3 floating objects, although there is a variation of people that say, was that in the ocean that the Chinese government said their satellites picked up 3 orbs? Or was that meaning potentially it was in the air?
Okay.
Could that be a defining moment in the MH370 investigation?
I am new. That's the first I've heard of this Chinese report, and if so, yeah, it could be a huge thing, a huge issue. Now, like, my interest in MH370 isn't because the videos are so compelling. Videos can always be faked. Although, as every day passes and every time I watch the video, so for those who know, my background's in video. I was actually in film school learning all of the top of the line techniques for visual compositing and VFX around 2012. So like 2 years before this video came out. So I feel very confident that I know what was possible and how to achieve certain things back in the day, especially from your home. All right, specifically from your home, which is what the claim is, that this video is hoaxed by some rando who has yet to come by and collect any credit or money. My interest in the case lies solely in the reaction to Ashton's persistence, and it is an immune system response. And the only thing I can attribute that to is the secrecy system that has kept UFOs and advanced technology out of our view for so long. That's my conclusion.
Thanks, Tuba. And real quick, if I could respond, and then also I think we've got Ian Carroll in here as well. If we could bring him up, that'd be awesome, because I've been wanting to talk to him for a long time. But with respect to the debunking and stuff, the difference between someone like Mick West is like when you see Mick West talk on the debunking side, like you said, it's pathological. He's the kind of guy that he comes out there and he says, this is what it is. I know that it's this. But my approach isn't like that. My approach is, here's what the evidence shows. I'm going to show you the evidence, and then I'm going to give you my opinion on it. And, this is why, like, I've watched a lot of what Ian Carroll's done with respect to conspiracy stuff as well out there. And that's why some of his stuff's so compelling as well, is he shows you the evidence straight up, and he gives you his opinion as well about it. And that resonates with people because, you know what? It's authentic. It's somebody who's going out there and they're not trying to tell you what to believe. They're just going, I'm just a guy. Here's this crazy stuff out there. You do with this information what you will. You believe it or you don't believe it. And I think that's why a lot of these people who've tried to attack me, ambush me, whatever, it always backfires. Always backfires. I even tell them ahead of time it's going to backfire when they do it. And they still try, and then it still backfires every single time. So that's the recipe for people out there. Just be an authentic person who's just trying to figure out the truth.
Absolutely. I agree. And here's the thing. To your point, Ian, I have watched a lot of your videos, and by the way, we've actually used a couple of your clips on our podcast, and I think you do an amazing job of explaining kind of what we've been trying to explain tonight. Is like, how do you explain to people the reality of what's actually going on? And I think, Ian, you do an amazing job on video explaining that, and I think that's why you're going to go down in history as someone that's like, hey, when the times are going really tough and people were trying to divulge truth, like, how do you divulge it, right? Ian, how do you feel about number one, MH370, and what is your outlook on America? Because I think that if if anyone watches your videos,
he does have great hair.
You're like, holy shit, I know what's going on. What do you feel about MH370, and then what do you also feel about where we're going? And I don't know if he's
spaces be glitching.
Yeah, that could be
all the time.
Also, strike them down for using your content, Ian. Strike them down.
Yeah, you should strike them.
Just kidding.
No, it's fair use, brother. Fair use, brother. Fair use, brother. Yeah.
He probably tried to rejoin.
So yeah. Anyways, but has anyone? Okay, so to your point, Ashton, Ian. Oh wait, he's okay. Ian, are you here?
Thank you, Complizier.
Did you hear my question earlier?
You might have to re-say it. There's like a delay when people get brought up.
Yeah, I mean he's trying to talk. It's just...
Can you guys hear me right now?
Yes.
Oh, there he is. What's up?
Cool. Yeah, thanks. I'm on really bad cell service right now. I'm having home internet problems. But it sounds like you can hear me right now.
Yeah, we got you.
We got you now.
Yeah, I left and came back because Investigate Earth was not coming through for me. If I cut out or whatever, just roll with it, and I might.
Ian, did you hear our question? Our question basically was, you have done an amazing job trying to tell the story of what is actually going on in the world today, right? And number one, my first question was, do you believe about MH370 to be possible? And then number two, what drove you to do what you're doing now as far as going viral, dude, with what you're doing? I mean, you're doing amazing things, video content, short form, telling people what they need to know. Number one, MH370, what do you believe? And then number two, how did you get to that point of, hey, how do I tell people very fast what's actually going on?
I'm a great job of the evidence. And I.
Uh-oh. No.
Ian, you might want to hold your phone out of a window.
No, we were so close to getting his opinions.
Ian, hold your phone up in the air. Get on a chair and then stand up and then talk into the phone.
No, I got to go out on the porch, I think, and get some sky.
There we go. Now we can hear you.
Yeah, how about now, right?
Yeah, it's better.
That'll give me a little bit. Cool. Yeah, I didn't know much of anything about MH370 before I saw Ashton's reporting on it. And Ashton did such a good job of doing what he was just talking about, of sharing the evidence and presenting. And Ashton, you do a great job of addressing debunkers, like with respect, but also with facts, which is always a good sign of someone who is honest and like here for information and not for dogma. So I lean towards MH370 seems very real. And in general, it just ties into the larger network of like disclosure is happening from a lot of angles right now. And every angle it happens from ignites 100 new angles of like, not just skepticism, but also what feels like immune responses, to quote whoever was saying that just a second ago. And I tend not to operate in certainty about anything. Like anything could be true or anything could be false, but it's certainly, there's enough possibility of it being true that we should all be considering it and investigating it. Because, you know, what's the worst that can happen? You investigate something that's untrue and eventually we find evidence that it's untrue, and then sick. Like now we've learned something, right? But the only time when you shouldn't investigate something is when you're like beyond all reasonable certainty that it is untrue, or if it's like completely inconsequential. But the more consequential something is, the more reason there is to investigate it beyond all reasonable doubt. That's the way that I see things.
So smart.
And there is no more consequential question, right? Like, I mean, that's an opinion, but I don't think there's any more consequential question right now than the alien question. And I'm honestly starting to lean more and more and more towards the word alien being the wrong word, based upon like the things that people like Tucker are saying, based upon the things that people like the government officials are saying, based upon the evidence that we have. Like, I mean, this is where you get into a lot of speculation, but I lean a lot more towards the either ancient, like ancient civilization theories start to get really interesting to me. Future civilization theories start to get really interesting to me. I don't see any reason to rule any of that out. And I also see that it could be a total possibility of things coming through the atmosphere and down to Earth. Though Tucker had a great argument in his recent interview with Rogan about how like all the observations are on Earth and we have like blanket visual on the atmosphere and we don't have any sightings of things coming through the atmosphere, I don't think. But we have a lot of oceans that are unexplored on this Earth. So I'm at the stage of just being like so curious and having so many questions. And for me, the biggest red flag is always people that are not curious. Like, if you're quicker to say we know everything than to ask questions, you're probably not very smart because inherently you don't learn without asking questions. And so the people that aren't asking questions are probably the ones that are not as smart.
But
Just to be
Ian,
blunt about it.
Ian, I recognize something in you that I recognize something in Ashton. It's like you guys have an inherent ability to think outside the box, and I think what person that has made us who we are today has not been able to think outside the box. You have to.
100%. Yeah, and I think that we are all like, especially in America, I don't know how many of you are Americans, but we're trained to think inside the box. Like our school system inherently is supposed to teach us to fill in bubbles. And so it is kind of a rare breed of people, although it's becoming more and more common as everyone starts to realize that the box is bullshit. But it's kind of a rare breed of person that thinks out of the box. But then it's, it also takes a lot of being a connector of ideas, like, because a lot of times we're operating on partial evidence in a lot of directions. We're operating on a lot of like little tidbits of stories, little bits of leaks. And so you have to do a lot of connecting of, like, I think that a lot of people that are smart and skeptical are hesitant to, like, not jump to conclusions, but to let themselves be imaginative in the process of journalism and in the process of, inquiry. But you inherently have to be imaginative in order to learn what we don't know yet. And in the topic of UAPs, like, there's no better example of a space where you absolutely need imagination in order to be able to arrive at the next truth that we don't know. But I think that same thing applies to even like basic financial corruption, any kind of journalism where you're uncovering something we don't know yet. And so I try to ride a good line of like being skeptical and looking for evidence and looking for facts, but being imaginative enough to know that, like, well, we know this is the pattern of organized crime. And so in this story, do I see any of those patterns? And if those patterns were real, like, what would be the next thing to look for? Because that's, how else are you going to know what to look for? And then maybe you'll find leads or maybe you'll find dead ends. Who knows? Yeah. But that's my take on that. And as for what brought me to where I am, I don't know. I invested in GameStop and then we learned that the whole stock market is a fucking lie. And then I got bored of waiting around throughout COVID and was like, well, I could probably be pretty good at making videos. And so I started making videos. And I don't know, I got real lucky on TikTok and I don't know, a combination of luck and skill, and one thing led to another.
Dude, you are definitely skilled.
But actually, there is one other thing I should say about that, because that's kind of my joking answer. But the sort of more serious answer is what the question that I started with, that I sort of am continually honing in on, is like, if I'm going to be making content, that's a job, and you're going to be doing it every day for the rest of your life. So you damn well better enjoy it. And like, if my job is going to be learning information and sharing it, what's the most like interesting information to learn? And I'm the kind of person that, to me, the most interesting information to learn is the most important information. Like, so to me, the question is like, what's the most important shit to understand in the whole world? And I started out thinking it was money because, well, for obvious reasons. But then that inherently led to actually, like, it's kind of like power, the way I see it. It's like the most important thing from my perspective to learn about is how the world works And like, yeah, that could be science, that could be religion, but it kind of, for me, it centers around power and who's controlling the world and who's
A lot of people
influencing
agree.
things and who's controlling our government and our monetary systems. And I
Yeah,
mean,
I'll
that
just agree with
naturally
these
spirals
people.
off into things like UAPs. And so all of my investigations, even though I like dig into a ton of different directions, they all center around like being some of the most important things to understand in order to understand the most important parts of our world. Hence, here we are talking about potentially being able to travel through space and time in ways that we never imagined possible.
It's awesome, man.
And
Real quick, and then Samantha, I'll let you jump in because I just want to make a couple quick comments based on what Ian said. First of all, one thing I love about Ian is that even though I've been disclosing scary stuff, like I'm pretty sure he's going to get taken out by the government before I do, so he's like kind of a buffer for me. But
yeah, I got you, bro.
I appreciate you, man. I really love what you said about people that are certain. You can't really question, like somebody who claims to be certain about something, you really have to second guess them. But people that know that they don't necessarily know everything they're investigating, they come off as more credible. The other thing that I love that you said is this idea that the more significant something is, the more we should look into it and not just dismiss it. I think that's a beautiful thought about it. And that's part of the reason why I can't let these videos go until we get a response from the government, because of how significant the idea of us being able to manipulate gravity and space-time really is. It's just so huge. And the last thing, just another little quick joke, is that like I actually for a while thought you were so good at what you were doing and putting information out there and making videos so quickly that like maybe you were being fed information by the CIA or somebody else. I just thought, like, is this guy controlled opposition? How is he so good at this? So can't wait to learn more from you, sir. Appreciate it. Sorry, Samantha, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're good. And I just wanted to thank you so much for joining. And I know we've gotten off topic, but this has turned into a great conversation. And we've got a ton of new people who
He
have
is
just
my human
joined.
shield.
So, for one thing, guys, if you are new and you're not already following our host Investigate Earth podcast,
Oh, I'm
please go ahead
simping.
and give them a follow. We're going to keep doing spaces like this, and you never know who's going to drop in, just like tonight. But if anybody has any
Actually, a
questions,
pro-Palestine college protest space, or is the title wrong? I was
no,
confused.
the title is correct, but we started out there and we've ended up in UFOs, which is kind of standard. So,
Hell yeah, cool.
exactly, yeah. And if anybody's got questions, wants to share anything, wants to ask in anything or Ashton, do me a favor and just click on the bottom left on the speaker option, and I'll give you the ability to speak. And then go ahead and throw a hand up if you would, so we can make sure we get to everybody in order.
Good
An
question.
American citizen, I know you've been waiting for quite a while. Did you have something you wanted to add with what we're talking about right now?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to add what I think's actually going on with the UFO stuff. I think what's going on is pretty much like what Alex Jones said, to where the fallen angels, there's like either hundreds or thousands, we don't really know, of fallen angels that were cast out of heaven and they were sent to Earth. So I think what's going on is they gave the United Nations knowledge to make craft, and the ones that look like the orbs that we've seen could possibly be fallen angels or something like that. I'm not really sure. So the orbs that are in that video are the exact same ones I've seen twice. And that triangle, I don't know, something about that looked like
BRB.
it was back engineered or man made for sure. That's pretty much all I wanted to add in.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. And Antarctic, can't read the second part right off, but what did you have going on?
Thank you.
We're
Yeah,
brewing.
sorry to break the chain. You got an English guy here speaking. Oh wow, Ian, Carroll, and Ashton in the same space. Brilliant. Two of the people that I've been. They're like two of my people from 2024. I follow you both for obviously different
I just want to
reasons.
say I can't hear Antarctic, so if Antarctic talks to me, someone else talk to me about it.
He's thanking you for
Damn.
being
Will
here,
do.
and you're his hero.
Yeah. It was me that put up the. I was following Ashton at the time on YouTube, and it was me that brought up the cloning questions, and I'm glad that he brought that up. But I just wonder what Ian thinks about not just the cloning, but the masking of politicians. Well, half of Hollywood, it seems. I just wanted to know what Ian's view was on all of that.
And
if it's
Ian,
possible.
can you hear him, Ian?
No, but I can hear you. So if you want to re-ask a question he asked to me, feel free.
Yeah, he wants to know what you think about cloning and what you think about masking. I think what he means is like literally people wearing masks, but yeah, cloning and masking.
Cool questions. I've intentionally avoided this topic in my content because you'll probably notice that I avoid the topics that like might have truth to them, but could easily get my whole platform kind of like put into the conspiracy boat in a way that like wouldn't necessarily be productive to me disclosing things when we have stronger evidence, so to speak. I think I was hearing Ashton talk about cloning just a little while ago when I first came in as a listener. I was listening anonymously for a second, maybe. And yeah, I think that it's fascinating how much cloning technology just like publicly does exist and is disclosed, but then there's this weird like paywall that pretends like we can't clone humans. I do think that there's a not a knowledge gap, but like a leap of faith that's not being totally addressed, in that a lot of people are theorizing that like we're cloning celebrities and shit like that. But that's totally skipping the fact that cloning doesn't mean you clone someone how they are today with all their memories and their brain and their age intact. Like cloning is like the technology of cloning is cloning the being as like an embryo or as an infant in a tank. Like it would be a whole different technology to clone someone like cell for cell as they are today, and that might exist. True. But that's just like so much more advanced than the actual just concept of cloning. And so I reserve judgment. Like I'm not sure. Masking, I mean, like the CIA was using masks all the way back in the Cold War. Like that's like old school tech. And I mean, that's not that complicated. I think that the complicated leap there is like, holy shit, would they really do that? Like with the motherfucking president of the United States? And I intentionally have not commented on that because like, I think anyone that would outright say that's not possible is like, dude, you're an idiot. They could like, I could wear a Biden mask. Like, it's
he's
the
talking about like
audacity
living
to
masks.
do it that's in question, right? And like I try to stick to topics where I can put evidence on the screen that is sort of like
we see
hard evidence or somewhat incontrovertible. And so I leave those topics that are more fun and speculative to the other people and in the realm of speculation. But my personal opinion on it is that both are completely possible. And it would be silly for people to think they weren't.
Yeah, thank
Awesome
you. And I
takes.
think you raised some great points there. And thank you for coming into our space and talking about these things. And I know what you're saying. Actually, this conversation sort of started out that way, that the censorship is definitely real. And I understand you having to kind of keep it to one side to even be able to still have your voice out there. So definitely understand that. We're going to try to catch a couple more people. Antarctic Monkey, if you'll drop out and come back in, we'll re-add you as a speaker. That way, if you have more questions for Ian, he'll actually hopefully be able to hear you.
Hey, by the way, hey, Sam, let's get to Ian, or sorry, not Ian, shit. Maze, go ahead.
Yeah, Maze Love in the chat.
Hey guys,
Maze is the legend.
Thank you. Oh, coming from you, that's a huge compliment.
If Maze is a speaker, though, I can't hear her. Just so everyone knows.
Y'all might need to rotate.
Yeah, we might have to rotate. I think Ian might have to rotate up and down.
I think I'm the problem. And what I'm actually kind of bored. Like I'm chilling and my house internet is down. So what I think I'm actually going to do is get in my car and drive into town where I have good internet and I can charge my phone and stuff. So I think I'm just going to drop out for like, 5 to 10 minutes, and I'll be back on when I hit the service in town. And I'll just jump back in with you guys.
Sounds good. I'm setting up a GoFundMe to get you some better internet, Ian.
Ian,
I got Starlink. It's just that my cable got fried, and so a new one is on the way.
Yeah, we're gonna get those MH370 satellites, Ian. So we're gonna see where you're at. So
yeah, I'll be back in just a minute, guys. I'll see you in a sec.
Sounds good.
Right.
Thanks.
All right, Maze. Go ahead.
How are you? Thanks for the invite to the space. I wanted to pop in and show some love, even though I'm late. I apologize profusely. Well, I guess just a comment really quickly on the cloning and the masks. I don't know about the masks. I've seen a lot of stuff on social media about that, but I definitely tried to go down the cloning rabbit hole to better understand what evidentiary support can I find. We do know about the Raelianism, where, this was something that was brought up many years ago. And in fact, he did almost a decade of interviews talking about what he was planning to do. And then they actually even reported on the progress of it. And, they're claiming at this point that there was a young, a baby, or I guess a baby that was cloned named Eve. And they made the announcement. There's actually some litigation. I don't know exactly what's, some legal stuff going on with Bridget around it. So it's a potential that there is one, at least. I think there's more, but of course, again, it's not provable at that. And I'm on the same boat with Ian, because what that does, in a sense, if you can't necessarily provide solid evidence, then it does kind of, mess with your credibility. But on the pro-Palestine and the college protests, I don't know exactly which direction. Are you just getting general opinions about that?
Yeah. So Mace, basically what
Okay.
we're doing is, by the way, I know your stance, Mace. Because and by the way, for those that don't know, Mace and I really started.
Oops, sorry, I was muted.
Well, account wise, we started basically the same time, did we not?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we and the weird thing is, like, she's got a lot more followers because she has participated in many spaces. We do not do that, but
she's also just a lot hotter than you, Chad.
absolutely, 100%. That's the other day. I mean, but Maze also, look, you can be hot and be dumb as shit, and she's not. So there is that. But regardless, Maze, pro-Palestine protests. I think our consensus here is that what we talked about earlier is that is the government or some type of psyop trying to disperse the ability for people to believe that it is not okay to kill civilians because of what the media is showing you on the TV every single day about how asshole these protesters are, right? I mean, because I think maybe we can kind of agree with this. Is like these protesters, what the media is showing is like, holy shit, dude. Like, we do not want to deal with these people. Like, we want to, like, if they interject us and going to work or to the airport, like, it makes you want to run these people over, right? I mean, kind of, right? I mean, it's like if you come up to me and you're like, whatever. But is that a psyop to tell you that, like, hey, just because civilians are dying in Palestine, like, don't worry about that. You got to be pissed off at this. That is kind of what we've been talking about.
Okay. Well, let me I guess kick this off with a question. You know, I know the type of content that you and you have on your podcast, and I would say that most of the people in here have already awakened to at least one thing, if nothing else.
Look at all these hands up.
And that is mainstream media. Okay, it's driving a narrative. It is driving something. It wants to capture the perception of the people around this topic. So what is it trying to tell the people in America? Western propaganda. It is basically showing, and if you'll notice that the tricks that they use, pro-Palestinian is often intertwined with pro-Hamas or pro-terrorist. Usually the pro-terrorist won't be necessarily in mainstream, but it has been. But that's kind of in the talking circles, but you'll see pro-Hamas and also pro-Iran. I saw that. And what they're trying to do is make it seem like these people are unruly. They're coming for your country. What are you going to do? And then at the same time, they begin kind of, finding ways to criminalize protesting. And how would they do that? Would they do that the same way they did with BLM? And let me tell you, I want to make this very clear. The protesting is real. It has been massive. They have broken the chains, okay, of the suppression around it. This is something that Palestinian advocacy was highly suppressed for many years. I mean, forever. I mean, it's people's jobs would get, they'd lose their jobs. They'd be unable to, get good jobs after that. Even it would just destroy their lives. So, but now it's gotten to the point it's broken out of that, and that's never going back into the bottle. And there's been protests going on for quite a while. In fact, 1 million people went to Washington, D.C., and it was so peaceful. There was no, like, and yeah, the reason why I'm highlighting that, and when I say all over the world,
it's back
massive. So I want you guys to understand that there is a real movement happening, and that's not fake. Now, what I do
Maze,
think,
Maze, do
yeah,
you love
Let's not
America?
cut
Do
her
you
off.
love America?
yeah, I do. Why?
Well, the reason I'm asking is because there is a very clear
Chad's
divide
too much to drink.
between protesters that show up to these events that are anti-America, and there are protesters that show up to these events that are pro non-killing civilians. And that's why I ask you, do you love America? Because if you do, then we got to at least establish some baselines of like, why are you protesting? Are you protesting because you hate America? Are you protesting because you don't want civilians to be killed in Palestine?
First of all, I think that anybody that is on soil here screaming death to America is a fucking psyop. And you should know that. You, of all people, should know that. Because people, this is something that is a age-old type of like back to, the war on terrorism. This is something that they would use to turn the minds of Americans against Islam and against to kind of cause that divide. Here's what I'm telling you, right? I am an American. I love America. In fact, I've had many spaces where I'm trying to get the pulse check on the American perspective around what's going on in the Middle East. And you know why? Because I think that people lack the tolerance for difference. And that is why we cannot get united over the very fundamental things that we do care about. And in fact, if we could get past the surface on those issues, we would be able to connect and unite for more important things. But right now, when I say that, is like, I mean our freedom, I mean our rights, I mean the right not only for free speech and all of those things, but right now our entire government has gone rogue. Okay. If nobody has noticed, we literally are going broke from sending all of this money under these crazy foreign policies. That is a neoconservative movement that's happening over there in the Middle East. And people are not paying attention to that. What I want you to know is that I'm not sitting here like I am not only pro-American, I'm pro-Palestinian, I'm pro-human. Okay. And what's going on right now is an attack on many levels. What I want you to know is that even though there's boots on the ground and tanks and everything happening over there in the Middle East, there's been a war declared on the minds. The minds of the Americans have been occupied, okay? Illegally occupied. And that's why when we're looking at this situation, I really ask everyone to consciously be objective. Okay, zoom out and think, what is it that they want me to think and why do they want us divided? Right now, this is the perfect reason for people to say, yeah, let's compromise. Let's make our right to protest and censorship, let's make it conditional. Because when it comes back around on a different, I would say, let's just say a different issue, this will be held as the standard. So all I'm saying is I'm absolutely pro-American. And to be honest with you, there's many of these protesters are American, just so you know. It's not like a whole bunch of.
Yeah, if I can jump in,
Way,
because
Maze, I agree. The last thing I want to say is I'm glad that you said that because I mean we've known each other for a while and or connected.
That's scaring me, guys.
I see some of your posts. I'm like, okay, I might have some
getting a little worried here.
Beliefs, but I also understand. That's why I wanted
getting
you
a little
to
bit worried.
Explain your viewpoint. And I think that we are so divided based on little things. Like it's like if this person goes for this, then we have to hate them. And I think that's a big issue. Ashton, go.
I want to ask you, maybe there's another question. And first thing I want to say is I'm going to play the role of Sherry here, Chad, to your opposite, which is, I think it's unfair for us to judge people who are protesting and try to figure out where we draw the line. Because if you go back to COVID, for example, I was one of the people that was protesting against the restrictions there. And should I have been arrested? There was a lot of people calling for people who were protesting against COVID restrictions to be arrested. And I think it would be unfair to say that those people shouldn't be arrested, but then be calling for the people who are the pro-Palestinians who are protesting now. And so that's why, like Maze said, is that if we draw the line one location at one spot, then we have to apply that equally as well. That's what, equality under the law means. So I think we need to be careful about that. And then what I want to know with respect to Maze's opinion is, I don't know, did you see the Joe Rogan interview where they had the guy that was pro-Israel justifying the number of civilians that were killed. I thought it was kind of shocking to me, because they were arguing that, well, tens of thousands of innocent civilians have been killed, but Hamas was like hiding within them, therefore it was justified. And I thought that was kind of silly to make that claim, that that somehow justifies murdering innocent people, is that there's, these terrorists are hiding within them. But did you see that? And what was your opinion on that?
Listen, I have been fighting, or I should say, when I say fighting, debating that argument since like the get, when they were just literally after week 1. It was insane, right? And that's what they kept saying. Oh, they're being used as human shields, and it's Hamas that's under the tunnels. And what tunnels? Show me a tunnel, right? They haven't showed a real tunnel. Everything they showed was debunked. And this is why I have a lot of resentment towards Israel, the government, and I obviously I would lean to say psychopathic. I've never seen so many apathetic people that have come together as a military in my life, to where they can literally dance on the graves of those that they killed, and stream the torture and abuses of the Palestinian people as they're carrying this out. I don't know if you guys know about that, but with that aside, there's been this sentiment that a Palestinian's life is far more inferior than that of Jewish lives or Israeli lives. And and although they are probably being politically correct in how they're trying to, I guess, quantify what one Hamas, member would be, but the numbers that they put, like, for what do they call high value, is they're basically stating with this AI that they're using that 100 casualties can be killed for that one. And it's like,
That's dark.
when they say that I want you to understand that this is what I've uncovered. This is again moving into my opinion, but what Israel's doing with impunity is not only changing the rules for engagement, but it has violated every international law as it pertains to war crimes. They are also just pay attention for 1 minute. This is a military, okay, one of the most advanced in technology, and they are unleashed havoc on a strip with 2.3 million people, highly dense, population of civilians, okay, and they have literally, like, just completely, they went rogue. Not one country can step in, and even the international court could not stop it. And if our country is now codifying in legislation a stronger relationship with Israel, it's literally all in our legislation. I've held spaces on this. There's obviously an economic potential that they're chasing right now with IMEC to extend connectivity between railway and port all the way through from India to Europe. This is massive. This is a huge deal, right? So when people aren't really thinking about all these other factors that are in it, I mean, they're not killing Palestinians just because they feel like that's an existential threat. These are the narratives. We have to separate the bullshit from what's real. And I really want you guys to start doing this, not for the sake of picking a side or fighting with me, for the sake of A, for your own expansion of consciousness, but B, for us to be able to find ways to connect on real issues so that we as a majority can exercise our power against this like totally corrupt, I would say, I'll just say globalist move. Now, one last thing I want to say is that we are watching, this at this point, I feel like every dollar that goes towards the defense budget in my country, because of how tight they are and how much United States has supported it, it could be funding my own demise. Why do I think it'd be any different here? And I think that one thing that most Americans forget is that as they're complaining about the border and they're complaining about how there are all these terrorists and everybody speaks Arabic, why do you think they're at our border, bro? And if you want to continue this allied relationship with Israel, just know that the plans that they have, which I have all that data, we can go through it if you like, the greater Israel is going to require them to continue to have to fund and fight and disrupt and destabilize. And there's going to be way more Arabs over here and many of our troops over there. Okay. And so, not that I mind. I mean, listen, I love my Arabs. I'm just saying that in general, as an American, we don't want our borders flooded. We want them to go through the process that they're supposed to be going through. But all of this is happening, and everybody's sitting here pointing fingers at each other, fighting each other. And it's like, bro, wake up. Okay, your mind is captured. Let's get our perceptions back.
Yeah. One last comment I want to make real quick, Chad, is that you know, a lot of people think that, okay, well, there's this psyop with respect to these protests that are going on, but look at what the sides are. When we had the Black Lives Matter protests happening, was the government stopping them? No, not at all. They let it proceed as much as they wanted. With this protest, you can see that the government's stepping in right away and shutting down the protests. So to me, if the point of it, this quote unquote psyop, is to disrupt things, then you would be letting it go on, which is not what they're doing. And I have no side in this, by the way. I'm not on either side with respect to this particular conversation.
I mean,
I agree, Mace. And Mace, listen, to your point and to Ashton's point is, Ian, I got to ask you, if you had to make a video on Palestine versus Israel, how do you portray that in your video?
That's a good question. I don't do it in a short form video. That's for fucking sure. I mean, I have many times, like little aspects of it, but actually I made a long form video on my YouTube. Well, I think I didn't put it on YouTube. I only put it on Rumble.
Thank you, Jake.
Actually, like the week before October 7th happened, just kind of by coincidence, because I realized I needed to talk about Israel relative to 9/11, and I realized I wasn't educated enough to like handle that before all this, And what I actually wound up doing kind of just intuitively as I started researching it is the first thing I researched was the propaganda surrounding it, because the conflict has been going on for so long. And the moment you start researching it, if you're perceptive, you realize that everything you're reading is propaganda in one form or another. And so I actually just started researching like all the way back to the beginning, the like factual information about like what factually happened that founded Israel, and then what led to the media environment within which I'm now receiving all of this skewed media about it. And it led me to a documentary on Rumble called The Occupation of the American Mind. And that's the tack that I take first, especially with people that are like, I mean, anyone who's seen my content knows that I'm generally like extremely critical of Israel. And I'm not pro Hamas, but I'm definitely pro innocent Palestinian lives. And anyone who holds an opposing view to that, when I have conversation with them or like get into a debate with someone, I feel like you can't find common ground if you try to argue over things that you think you are both right on. You need to start with common ground or like common understanding, or rewinding to just like understanding the other person's point of view. And especially on a place where the media, the information that people are taking in is all so skewed by very, very well-funded media machines. The first thing to do is to unpack who is funding that, what kind of like effort is going into that propaganda, how, like, what sources are people taking in. I mean, I think that's the first thing to unpack in this space.
And I could not agree with you more. And actually, you too, Maze. And this, I'll throw something else out that you may.
Because otherwise, you just wind up arguing over statistics that both people think they're right, and both people are getting their information from different sources.
If you're president, Ian, what do you do tomorrow? You become president tomorrow. What is your
Dude,
first?
That's a big question. I've never been asked it. Obviously, this answer is going to seriously lack nuance, but
this guy's so good.
I ask for an immediate review of all covert operations happening around the world, particularly in relation to the Ukraine, the Middle East, and the border. I don't know
Elect
exactly
Mays
what
as the vice president.
Yeah, 100%. I would need your expertise and your level head on it for sure. I don't know exactly what the presidential limits of power are, but I would enact some process of trying to initiate peace talks and or stop military funding to both Ukraine and Israel until contingent upon peace talks. And then I reroute all that funding to the southern border and into the U.S. economy, particularly into things like whole task forces completely dedicated to auditing corporate corruption in the banking, military, industrial, pharmaceutical, and agricultural complexes. Because, like, I don't know if anyone saw the recent congressional hearing where they were talking about how much a bag of bushings cost when the U.S. government is paying for like a plane to get built, and how the military industrial complex is like overcharging the U.S. government by like 100x when we're buying weapons and planes and all this, like. And I would imagine that the amount of money that if I didn't get assassinated on day 2 and we were able to examine those systems, we could claw back so much money that we could fix all of our own problems here domestically, and take care of our own people and make it so that young people can afford a house and can afford a life and can afford school. Because inevitably, like, all the money's going out into weird covert operations, into secret, like, UAP, undisclosed UAP technologies that aren't being used for the benefit of anyone. And all that money is then creating an economic situation which puts the kind of pressure on us that no one in America has the time to be educated well, to be because the thing is, when you're stressed financially, that leaks into your interactions, that leaks into frustration and anger and fear, that leaks into the kind of social situation that is not conducive to discourse or to unity. And so putting economic pressure on the American people only sows the seeds of divisiveness. And I would make sure the FBI is investigating Jay-Z. I think that would be my...
No, I agree.
That would be my list.
Ian, you are dead day 2.
I'm writing in Ian for president.
100% I'm dead. Yeah, I would need a vice president that was like ready to take the job.
You know what I would do, Ian, as vice president? I would ramp up your security like insane. And I mean, we could actually fantasize about how that would happen all day, but we would dismantle the CIA. And in order to do that, we would have to completely change what the security's like. And then I'm going to fire people all over Congress while you're doing all your stuff over there. Like, I'm telling you, I would. We have to. I think that we're going to have to actually.
Ian's my buffer, guys.
In order to really redo, reform what's happening.
It's the only one they're going to take out before me
as soon as possible. Because, guys, it's not what Ian's talking about. How they've been stealing money. Like, they've exploited on every aspect. But that specifically has been
100%.
known for a very long time. Why are they just now talking about? Why is mainstream just now talking about it? This has been known for a very long time. We have people here struggling barely with even a couple $100 in their bank account for emergencies. This is like an average family. That's scary. And it's only because
100%.
we have allowed it to continue,
Yeah, was somebody on a
what you
podcast
said
recently.
there, about the president is really important. We should quickly highlight what you said, because there's this like overwhelming sentiment that gets propagated that like, oh, who's president doesn't matter. It's just a figurehead, or like voting doesn't matter. And like, yeah, there's elements of truth to that. But like, when you actually, like, if you read about the history of the CIA, it's just a specific example. The president's office has massive power, and that's baked into the like legal structure of how our country is formed. And so, yeah, the president is just a figurehead if the president is a figurehead. But if the president is a John F. Kennedy, then the president has immense power to do things that can change the whole system of how America is working. And the problem is that the CIA learned that very astutely when they almost got shut down. And it's been pretty much top of their list to make sure that presidents that are, manipulable or aligned with them or blackmailed are in power ever since.
Yeah, Ian, can you hear me, by the way?
Can you hear Ashton?
I don't know if
I got you, Ashton.
Okay. I was just going to say, there's two aspects of that I wanted to hit. Like, first of all, this is part of the reason why we can't pass an audit. That all of these audits can't pass is because we're paying all this excess money and it's just being funneled away. And, the military has it set up in a way where, we can never figure out where it's going. But there was another thing that came up on social media recently where I don't know who said it exactly, but they said we should stop sending money to other countries until America looks like Dubai, where everybody has the money to, live. And to me, I totally resonate with that. So once again, I'm glad you're my buffer in terms of being assassinated before me. Appreciate you, brother.
I got you, man.
I just wanted
let
to
me-
highlight that we used to have the right to veto, just so you know, with the Federal Reserve, and that was taken away in 17 or something like that. I'll check, but that was, I guess one of that kicked off the end.
Are you guys able to hear me?
Do you guys last kind of subject? Maze, I agree with everything you're saying about Palestine. Like, I mean, I think the protests, like we were discussing doing a podcast, right, on the protest. And I was thinking, I was like, how do we talk about this? Because I do feel like it is infiltrated, but at the very least, Ian, do you think, and then we can get to some questions here.
We got a lot of hands up.
Do you think what is going on now is a mass psyop? Like, how deep are we in the reality of what is happening? I mean, you have a president that cannot talk, barely.
Yeah.
You have advanced tech. You have a UFO, but also, how much are we in a psyop? And then also, Ian, what is your religious take on the UFO phenomenon?
Good questions. The PSYOP question is vast, and I can only address parts of it, obviously. If you are going like everything, how much of it is it a PSYOP? I've done a fair bit of digging into the Biden family, and I think that the Biden family is heavily controlled on far more levels than most people realize, from far more angles than most people realize. I think they were installed for the specific overt purpose that what I just said about the office of the president being so powerful, like, there are critical global events happening in a timeline, and it is essential in the current time, like post-COVID, like with various, it's really necessary for all these people with billions and billions and trillions of dollars worth of plans going forwards, that they had a US president that would do nothing to, like, that would literally just walk around and hopefully say what they wanted him to say. But as far as like the protests themselves right now, is that a psyop? I think it's organic movement that's forming, and I think that it's like it's similar to like the TikTok question, like, is TikTok a CCP thing? It's like it's all user generated content. Like this protest is user generated content. Like if you think it's not, you clearly don't know any 20 somethings. Like you clearly don't know kids these days. Like they're so fucking fed up, and everyone has been just like, when are we going to make change? When are we going to make change? When are we going to make change? And then all of a sudden you have all of the young people in the country agree that Israel should stop bombing Palestinian civilians. And then they actually do something about it. And suddenly everyone is like, well, why are you doing something about it? It's like, bro, what did you expect? But that being said, I think you're a fool, or rather just uneducated about the history of the CIA or covert operations, if you think it's not being infiltrated in every possible way right now. Because that's just the nature of covert operations, is like, they have never, since the inception of the CIA, they don't create movements. They find movements that exist, and then they infiltrate, subvert, push and pull. They do what they can to use movements that already exist in order to affect whatever they need to affect. They did it with BLM, where it was like, at first it's like, this is about inequality, and then suddenly it's about burning police stations and like off-gassing tension. They did it with January 6th in a way that, like, at first it was about like, we stand for America, and then suddenly it was like, cool, now we got our footage that we needed. I mean, I'm hugely oversimplifying. And so I'm just of the opinion right now that I hope that all those protesters in all those colleges are aware enough of that they are being highly vigilant to infiltrators, and they are being very cogent of not falling into mob and group think, because it's really easy to get led by PSYOP tactics when you fall into mob think in the moment, during a protest, during the chaos.
Are you guys able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Sam.
Okay. I just wanted to jump in for just a second. Maze, thank you for joining. At this point, we've got a lot of people that are requesting to be speakers. I know there's a lot of people that want to be able to say things. With Ashton and Ian and Maze all being in here, we're going to limit it at this point to people who actually have questions for the three of them. So if you do have a question, put your hand up or leave it up. If not, we're going to go ahead and remove a couple people as speakers just to get some other people in case they do have questions. Take it away, guys.
Thank you, Samantha.
As to the question about the spiritual aspect of the UAP phenomenon, I am highly fascinated by that aspect. I'm actually on a personal quest to find God over the last year or so. And I think I'm not going to arrive at like a classical religious take on it, but I'm so glued to like what people like Tucker are saying about the spiritual aspect of it, despite having wildly different beliefs than him. And for me, the main thing there is like, if every other
Joe
human
Biden mask.
civilization in history has, it's evidenceable that they had interactions with these things in some forms, and they thought they were gods. It's like, well, I mean, it's interdimensional. They're telepathic, is what we probably know. So, I don't know. I'm learning.
And by the way, Ian, I agree. We have done quite a few biblical episodes the past 2 years. And it's like, I am on this journey. What do we have to? I don't know, man. There's so many things I thought I knew growing up, and now I don't. And now I'm back on the journey. But also, science is starting to prove that there is more of a realistic aspect of biblical things that I always thought I knew back in the day, and then I questioned, and now we're going back to science. Science is proving, I think, the possibility of God, which is weird.
It's really, I love this topic. Tomorrow, I'm doing a space with Gavin. We're going to go into existics, right? Which is like the study of existence, and it takes in quantum physics, and it kind of goes beyond that. I mean, and he's announcing something that is going to disrupt science in a major way. Hoping, it's going to be huge. I hope you guys come. It's going to be great. But I also want to say that if you have not read the Celestine Prophecy, I'm telling you, this is one you have to buy. Don't do the online
We have to stop
PDF
here in a
thing.
minute,
Buy
chat.
the book, sit somewhere and read it. I promise you. Something about that. It lets you kind of I guess the insights and how everything in the universe is very, very coherent. Everything, even in its own silos, you see the perfect coherence of how a worm,
How many people are watching?
is how much it does for agriculture, right? Like just a worm, like will make a little hole, goes down, it does its thing, and then that actually allows 5 other processes to happen that are seemingly disconnected or not related, but they are, and we are part of that, right? And then so like, how could it be so perfect, right? And so in essence with that, I think we see God in everything. Like to me, that is in essence that same energy that is allowed for that ebb and flow. And the Celestine Prophecy talks about the current of how all of that happens. It's so amazing. The insights talk about energy and all that shit. But I just love that you guys said that if you're on your journey, because that makes me smile. I love discussions like that. And yeah, in terms of what we're seeing in the skies, like I don't think that is aliens. What I will say is that I do think that there are aliens. I just don't think that they're going to need I think that there's a whole different, like another layer of science we've not tapped into yet. I do believe that these are probably maybe derivatives of some of the technology that they've already acquired a long time ago, and they're not going to tell the American people because or the world, because they're spending their money trying to build this out. I just feel like that most of them are technology. Of course there's definitely some real ones, but most of them that we're seeing is, I think, human technology.
Yeah, one comment I want to make on that is that I was just on with Alpha Vets earlier today, which shout out to him and on his Rumble channel. And we actually spoke about this idea that technology is making people more spiritual again, which you find out, I think, that a lot of people look at science and think they're trying to disprove the idea of God. But when you start to look into quantum mechanics and the idea that the holographic principle specifically, you start to realize that our reality is potentially a simulation, or it's a construct, I guess. And if there's a construct, then there's a creator. So for me, looking into science has made me more spiritual.
I was going to say, what I've looked through right now is the Nephilim, and I think that's an actual thing. I mean, like we see like as like Bigfoot is not a real thing, or what the government doesn't want us to think that like all these things, like reality as we see it right now is almost like a skewed it's all skewed for us. Like everyone wants to see like their own thing, like with they'd rather you watch like the Grammys or that. I think that's all just garbage. I think that what we should be watching is like what is like the reality of this plane that we're in, and that where there's multiple planes. I mean, you could call me crazy. Everyone can think their own thing. That's the way that I think right now. I think that we're in different planes and that things can hop into different planes like that. So I just figured that's what I would say.
You're not crazy, Shane. You're definitely not crazy.
Good insights,
Thank
man.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Ashton and Maze, are you guys cool if we take some questions?
Yeah, that's cool. I did want. Can I ask? Investigate pod. I forgot your first name. Forgive me. I apologize profusely. But what is your first? What do I call you? Because when I came in here, I could sense. What is your name? Sorry. Okay, you did mute. What is it?
That's all good. It's Chad, but yeah, investigator Chad and Cherry.
Well, I wasn't sure what you wanted me to call you. I guess that's what I should have asked. So I've noticed. I'm a very I could tell that you potentially take issue with what I've been posting, and it's okay. Like, I welcome conversation and dialogue and better understanding the differences, and I think we can make a great example out of a dialogue where I have my differences, you have yours, but I would love to know what it is that you take issue with, and potentially if you want to elaborate on why.
Chat.
Okay. Damn. All right. Here's the thing. So I don't actually take issue.
Spicy chat.
I think Maze, when we first kind of met, or I guess first interacted with each other, I mean, we had, well, first of all, the Israel-Palestine war was not happening, right? So, we had a lot of the same discourse, a lot of the same feelings and thoughts and beliefs. I don't know. I mean, I think actually
I gotta go to
listening
sleep,
to
chat.
you tonight, I was like, damn, you know what? It's like, it's weird because I think you have to be passionate about what you're speaking about. And I think that you are. And then, but also I think how we portray things and how we say things at times, it can make other people feel a certain way, more, I guess, vividly or passionately on the other side of things. And although we don't necessarily understand maybe by some of the things you post, from my perspective, I think that was what it was for me. But then hearing you talk tonight and then asking some of those questions, and when we actually have a conversation, it makes me understand why you feel the way you do, as passionately as you do. And so, so I will take back, like, and we've talked back and forth. I actually sent you.
You can't call in sick,
messages.
guys,
Said,
to a podcast.
I don't agree with what you're saying at all. And you were like, why would you say that? I think you said something like that. I can't remember what the back and forth was, but nonetheless, hearing what you said tonight and why you said it and why you're passionate about it and why you care about that, I think those things are very important. I think that caring about civilians, no matter who they are, is very important.
Yeah,
I
he's
think we
beating around the
have to
bush.
care about civilians. I think we have to care about people, because I think the disconnect here is that you are fighting against the overlords, which make those decisions to kill innocent people, just as much as we are with what we're fighting for. And although there are some little disconnects, maybe it may be based on religious aspects of it, or maybe it's based on belief systems, or whatever the case is. But the reality is that it's all the same people that are making those decisions to influence what our beliefs are. And so when I, but also in nuance, when you post certain things, or from the past, you would see those
Chad,
things, and maybe you have like a certain
Chad.
viewpoint, and you're like, well, I don't agree with that, and that's not what I agree with. Even though, if you hear what you said earlier, you don't get what you said earlier in a tweet or a post or whatever. You don't get the nuance of like, why am I saying this, and why do I care about this? And I think we oftentimes let little things or belief systems get in the way of
Slobbing
people,
that,
relationships.
slobbing on that
And the reality is we're all fighting for the same thing. We really are. No matter how we're fighting for it, I think most human beings are fighting for the same thing. We just have varied routes that we're doing that. And so I don't hate on you at all, Maze. I'm glad you actually came in and said that. And actually, I think I came into a big space that you were in at one point in time, and talked about this as well. So yes, and I think we have to take something from that.
I'm gonna have
It's
to
like,
drop here, guys.
I know we think we understand everything. We don't. And there are going to
Greatest
be
space
people
ever.
fighting on both sides. But how the hell, the number one question besides aliens is like, how do we all come together as human beings and actually realize that we are fighting a dictatorship, a world dictatorship that is really trying to control all of us?
Out with the junior.
Wow, I really appreciate your answer. And also, it does have me intrigued because, and knowing like which posts and what, not because I want to defend or to say, because I want to understand how they come across, because I want to be able to communicate in a way where people understand I'm talking to all of us. I'm not necessarily
I might have to ask one more
trying
question.
to feed any divide at all. And in fact, I think that if we were to do an inventory about some of the belief systems that we have that kind of really push us in some sort of political position, like how did we adopt those over time? We've had a TV sitting in our living room for decades, kind of feeding us these narratives, and we can't help but allow these little seeds to get dropped in our psyche. And I think that that is still what we're operating from if we're not conscious about it. I've literally had to unpin a lot of beliefs that I'm still kind of acting. I'm like, but wait, why do I even think that, right? And it's crazy to know. I mean, social behavioral sciences on like how to get people to act and react and be emotional and to consent is weaponized. There's think tanks for this, and I think that we are going to continue to fall for that, because our emotions will get tapped into, and when our emotions are tapped into, rationale kind of leaves, and we begin to react, and that's kind of what's been keeping people divided. But I would love to know, because I think it is more
There's a
important
lot of
now than
people in
ever. Like
this.
I had a
445
space
people in
to
here.
get all the Americans in there to talk about the Middle East, to get just the American perspective. What is it that you guys really think is going on? And it was all my people. I couldn't get all the other, the other side, because they're not going to come to my space. And I realized that it's going to be very difficult to pull this off if I cannot get, an audience, that's in there, that's willing to kind of really talk about this at a deep level and not
Just do it
mudsling, which I can
anyway.
handle that. I don't care who it is. When they come on my stage, I can usually alchemize that, but I just couldn't really get too many. It was 1,000 people in there, but not many that were speaking up for, I would say, what their feelings are that didn't really align to mine. So anyway, we can at least maybe start communicating better. If you see something of mine that you feel like is highly offensive, I think what's been happening is people trolling the comments, and it's just gone to straight war within the Twitter streets. Like, I think if we're able to, have the dialogue, like, what is it that offends you about this?
Maze, by the way, I look, I'm not offended or sensitive to anything. I mean, I know everybody has opinions for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I was saying that in essence, for everyone that's listening to us, is that if we're not taking responsibility for building
We need to get
more,
to Ian.
I would say
We gotta get
productive
to Ian chat.
relationships within this app, so that we can begin collaborating on, some of the most important issues. We have elections coming up. We have, our cybersecurity, who's running that? What are these bills coming down? Do we even know what's going on? Like
Guys,
we're
I missed the other
inundated with so
granny.
much that if we're not partnering and organizing to some degree and some capacity, it could really be the downfall. It's on us, and I'm willing. I'm open and willing and 100% ready. And I just hope that we find a way to make that happen. Whether whatever that looks like.
Please, I love starting fights on Twitter. I love it so much. Nothing makes me happier than shit talking on Twitter.
I've seen very few people attack you though, Ian. Like, how do you get around the toxicity out there? What's your secret?
Man, I wonder the same thing. I wonder the same thing. It's like, I do get haters, plenty of them, But like I did start what the dialogue that Investigate and Maze just had was really interesting because it does encapsulate a lot of what I sort of like I came into the game like old enough and like thoughtful enough that like I had a blank slate on my stuff, and I've wanted intentionally to make a platform that would be very much in the middle and not divisive, and not like, for example, not address trans stuff at all, because trans stuff is so divisive and a lot of it's opinion based. And so I just like ignored it. And I think maybe that built like a central base of respect, even though now I am a lot more divisive, especially on Twitter. And I don't know why I don't get more. I mean, I got into a fight with Hank Green on Instagram or on TikTok, I think, about science and sunscreen. Like I got into lots of like heat on TikTok, but it's kind of faded away.
TikTok
I don't know what's
trolls.
going on there.
You got to teach me the secrets, because I've had trolls that coming at me like crazy out there. But yeah, I see you out there, and I did the same thing with like, there's certain topics, even the Israel Palestine stuff. I mean, this is why I think what Maze and Investigate Earth, Chad, they were talking about is that a lot of it's just very heated. There's a lot of very passionate arguments on both sides, and I try to avoid a lot of the social issues that are out there as well, like the trans stuff and what have you. Although I'm definitely making fun of people without pronouns in their bios, but that's a little bit separate, I'd say.
I mean, to be fair too, Ashton, one thing to keep in mind too is that when anyone whose account starts to grow very quickly, my theory is based on my experience and watching others, is that at first your accounts are getting pushed to wide varieties of people because you haven't niched out yet, so to speak, in your following, and people haven't blocked you, and people haven't, because every time that an account has not yet interacted with your content and your content comes across their feed, they are an unknown quantity, and so you're being shown to way more haters. And over the first 6 months of creating content that's going far beyond your initial reach, you're getting all those haters. But over time, the ones that hate you will start scrolling past your posts, they'll start blocking you, they'll start not interacting, and then their feeds won't fill with your posts. And so there's a natural sort of algorithmic flow that makes it so that eventually you kind of silo in a little more, which is not necessarily good, but it does make it so that some of that hate just doesn't come your way because they just already ignore you. And I think maybe part of it is also that I'm like reasonably good at engaging with the ones that I know I can like absolutely smash and smashing, and then they don't come back. And I try not, and another part is actually I try not to get in fights where I'm wrong. Like if I'm wrong, I'm like, oh fuck, I'm wrong. Like I think it's really important to have the humility on social media to be wrong and to not know, and to admit like you don't have to be an expert. And when you actually get something wrong, like engage with that, learn from it, have a discussion. Like it's not the end of the world. And I think that gains a lot of respect from people. And then in the future, when they see you say something they don't agree with, it's like there's a lot more grace around your platform. But it also means that over time, you start to get less things wrong, and people start less fights with you, because like there's no better defeat than like trying to like gotcha someone and then them just being like, oh shit, you're right, man. Like, thanks for enlightening me. And then they're like, what the fuck was that? Like, what was that? We were supposed to have a Twitter fight, and then you were just like a humble, rational human. The fuck? And I think there's nothing more
Ian, by the way,
important on the
I think
internet.
you do a great job, by the way, of towing the line, right? You had said, it's like, how do you toe the line? Like we're huge on Spotify, which Spotify is great right now. As far as like, if you want to say shit that you can't say on, say, Facebook or X or TikTok or whatever, Spotify is a good way, especially if you're audio, because they're like, hey, we got these numbers, we got that money, the ad revenue is still coming in. But Ian does a good job with like TikTok and those platforms, X and whoever, especially TikTok. But to where you toed the line somehow, to where you get your message out, but you don't go too far, and you kind of, and I'm sure you probably think about that on a probably regular basis. Like, how do I toe the line just enough to not get banned? Right.
I mean, a lot of it, especially TikTok, is like the most censor happy platform. Not necessarily for any logical reasons. It's just that they have so much scrutiny that they have their AI censorship algorithms just like cranked to 1,000. And so coming of age, so to speak, in the TikTok environment got me really good at sort of like rhetorical techniques like sarcasm, or like leading a sentence to a thing and then not saying the thing and letting the evidence on the screen sort of imply the thing. Things like that allow me to not like overtly say the hard parts, the controversial parts, the parts that'll get you banned, but to provide all of the building blocks for all of my audience to get there on their own. Things like that really help.
I appreciate those
You know,
insights.
can I just
I've got to
comment
drop,
on
guys.
what Ian?
Real
I
quick.
just wanted to say this really quickly. What I love
Go for it.
about you is that you are very kind of happy and eager to share information that you just found. It's like you're going on a journey with your audience. And I have seen you say, okay, y'all, I was wrong about that. I appreciate the feedback, you know, and I remember it was pretty, because I'm all about regenerative agriculture too. So that whole thing kind of, you know, it was something that I was pondering at first as well. But I saw that you got a lot of the feedback and you took it. You're humble, and this is what makes you real and accessible. And you know, so I thought that I think that you do a great job.
Yeah, I just want to thank some people because I have to drop here as well. This has been an awesome space. Thank you, Chad, Sherry. Thanks to Ian for jumping on here as well. Looking forward to talking to you more in the future. Maze, everybody else too. I see you guys up here. Just quick plug. I'm going to be on The Blaze tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. if you are a subscriber. Otherwise, I think it's going to post like noonish. I'll be talking about MH370 stuff. Can't wait to talk to some of you guys more. It's been an awesome night tonight. Guys, have a great night. Thank you very much
Thanks,
for the
Ashton.
space.
Thank you, Ashton.
Thank you, guys.
Maeve,
Ashton, I hope you come to the space that I have tomorrow, and if you want to co-host with me, with Gavin.
Yeah. By the way, Ashton is man. We had.
Okay, closing that. Guys, okay, thank you very much. I'm going to do a couple of questions real quick that people asked. I wrote down on my thing over here that would help you guys out with before I go to sleep. So as you guys just heard, awesome space. Holy crap, did not expect that, guys. Didn't expect Ian to jump in, have Maze Love jump in, Chupacabra jump in. We had some of the most awesome people that are out there all of a sudden jump in this space. I was planning on, you know, talking about more MH370 stuff, but instead we'll talk about it tomorrow. I'll probably join Maze's space tomorrow with Gavin. He talks a lot about quantum physics and extensits. I'm saying it wrong. You guys probably figured it out. Okay, what is my favorite book and my favorite movie? Gladiator was one of my favorite movies for the longest time. Favorite book? I don't read that much, but when I do read, there's a series that I liked a lot that was called The Saga of Recluse, and I'm, you know, kind of a nerd, so I like those medieval kind of RPG-ish kind of books. So I like that a lot. Another book that keeps coming to mind is Timeline. The movie sucked. Don't watch the movie Timeline, but the book Timeline was really good, and it's about going back in time in general. People asked, how do you teleport your plane? Well, I did pin that to my profile, so if you want to check out how you warp an object, we're not talking about dematerializing, rematerializing. Go ahead and read that. I think I lay it out. You can Google the terms and you can check it out yourself. It's not just making stuff up that's out there. But the 4 things that I'm saying are real. I'm saying that, well, maybe there's more than 4. Extra dimension is real. Space is not empty. The ether is real. This means that we can produce cold fusion, which can achieve over unity, like the power of the sun in the palm of your hand. Straight up free energy, the ability to extract energy from the ether itself, that there's an unlimited well of energy available to us in that extra dimension that's out there. And then gravity manipulation. And this comes in 2 forms. So the first form is like EM drive, being able to negate the force of gravity using like an impulse engine, electromagnetic effects, just to create a force that's the opposite of gravity. That's one form. The other form is literally bending space-time around an object to create a warp bubble. And I'm saying that all of these things are real. And I think that once you prove one of them, you proved all of them, essentially. So that's what I'm saying that's out there. Let me see if there were any other questions I wanted to address. I think that's about it, guys. So, oh wait, somebody asked a question. Are you Master of the Universe or a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle age? 40 plus, right? Both, actually. but more of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle age than the Masters of the Universe. But I am familiar with both. Absolutely, that's out there. So yes, I hope you guys enjoyed this tonight. I hope you guys enjoy the Eric Hecker Hard Truths podcast. As you may have gleaned from that conversation, I am planning on hopefully talking with Ian Carroll again in the future. Definitely feel like a little bit kindred spirit with him. Now, he's much bigger than I am, especially on TikTok and what have you. But I like the way that he goes about his logical thinking process. I feel like I could talk to that dude probably for hours and hours and hours. So hopefully there'll be some new content with both of us together collaborating in the near future. I'll let you guys know when there's anything official that I can announce on that front. So yes, thank you guys again. And then tomorrow, check me out on the Blaze. And tomorrow night, check out the stream. I may stream the space that Maze was talking about. Otherwise, we will talk about more MH370 stuff. I know there's been a lot of developments. We found out a lot of information about how the videos are potentially created from the military and how they are viewed. So we'll go over all of that as well. Thanks, guys. Thanks, MH370X. Appreciate you guys. Have a good one, and we'll play you out.
It's